I'm going to call the meeting to order, please, at 7 p.m. If we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome to our March 9th business meeting of the Milford Board of Education. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Fieser for student and staff recognition, please.
So we have 3 different recognitions this evening, and I want to begin by asking if Raven Grant would come up. Raven. Raven is a senior at Jonathan Law High School, and I know that Mr. Cavana is here from the high school to celebrate in this recognition. And she is this year's recipient of the Daughters of the American Revolution Good Citizen Award. The Good Citizen Award recognizes students for 4 outstanding qualities: dependability, service, leadership, and patriotism. But not only was Raven selected, I'm pronouncing that correctly, yes?
Yes.
Raven selected as the winner for Jonathan Law, but also the chapter's Good Citizen winner out of 4 candidates who were also up for this award. So basically, she's number 1, which is fabulous. She was required to write an essay on a secret topic. And when we talk about a secret topic, what it means is that the topic was unknown to her until an envelope containing the subject was literally given to her in front of a faculty member. She then had to open up the envelope, and she had 2 hours in which to write the essay, and it could be no more than 550 words. The faculty member had to supervise the writing of the essay because no outside sources, other than a dictionary, was permitted to be used. After the 2-hour time limit was reached, the essay could not be edited. That was it. She had to submit it. In addition to the essay, she also had to submit an outline with her resume, as well as her community service, future plans and goals, and how she embodies the 4 pillars of the organization. Again, dependability, service, patriotism, and leadership. She also had to submit 2 letters of recommendation and her high school transcript. As an aside, it should be noted that Raven is an honor student who excels in AP Calculus, AP Chemistry, and AP Physics. That would not be me. That's Raven. So there was a panel of judges that actually judged her. And basically they judged on, not on her essay, obviously, but also on the other submitted information. So along with the 3 other winners, although she is number 1 of the 4 of them, she's going to receive a certificate, a pin, and $100 at a ceremony on March 12th. As the Free Love Baldwin Stowe chapter's overall winner, Raven's application has been sent on to the state level for another round of competition. So before we congratulate you, are you allowed to tell us what the secret assignment was or not?
I think so.
What was it on?
It was how our past affects our future, and what this means to be an American, really.
Okay. So we want to congratulate her and wish her good luck as she progresses to the next round. And with that, I'd like to give you a certificate, and I'd like to ask if you would shake all the hands of the board members and the administration. Again, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, engineer.
Should also recognize Raven's parents in the audience here. Congratulations to both of you. So our next Actually, we have 2 students for this particular award. I'd like to call up Samantha or Sam Martinez and Katie Buckheit. Is that pronounced correctly? Neither one are here? Not yet? Well, maybe they will be in a few minutes.
I'm equipping Sam for sure.
Okay, and let me move on to the next one. May I call up teacher Pat Daniels? Pat, didn't see you. How are you?
Good, how are you?
You've been recognized before many times, which is great. This is special education teacher Pat Daniels from Jonathan Law High School. And again, Mr. Cabana is here on her behalf. And she has received the Unified Sports Outstanding Coach of the Year Award. For those of you who may not be aware of Unified Sports, it's a registered program of Special Olympics International. It combines individuals with disabilities and peer athletes on sports teams for training and competition. The United Sports Program pairs an athlete with a partner of a similar age and athletic ability. As athletes and partners train and compete together, they foster ties that develop into friendships both on and off the athletic field. The 2 compete side by side, each one a meaningful and integral part of the Unified Sports team. Participation in Unified Sports leads to new friendships, improved self-esteem, and positive changes in attitude, behavior, and performance. And I would say on the part of both students, the special education student and his or her partner. In January, special education teacher Patricia Daniels was informed that she was selected by the Connecticut High School Coaches Association to receive the Outstanding Coach of the Year for Unified Sports. Ms. Daniels received recognition over the years for her efforts and participation in this program. I know that even in my 4 years here, I think you've been here twice. She works tirelessly leading her coaches, athletes, and peer athletes in this wonderful program. And if you ever have an opportunity to go to one of the Unified Sports programs, it's just growing and growing in both schools. I mean, it's just more and more kids are coming out, and it's really fabulous to see. The dedication and devotion exhibited by all involved does not go unnoticed, and this is largely due to the efforts of Mrs. Daniels. It's just incredible what she's done. On May 14th, she and other honorees selected by the Connecticut High School Coaches Association will be formally recognized at a dinner being held at the AquaTurf. So we want to thank Mrs. Daniels for her continued and unwavering commitment to all student athletes and being such a motivator for all of us in the system.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
And I should say that Ms. Daniels' husband, Mr. Daniels, is here in the audience as well. So now I'm going to call up Samantha, Sam Martinez, and Katie Buckheit. Katie, am I pronouncing your name? Katie's not here? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So these 2 students are being recognized as having been selected for the Connecticut Music Educators Association All-State Music Festival. And before I talk a little bit about what's involved in that, I want to recognize Mr. Berkowitz, who is here this evening, and also band and music director, Ms. Jessica Shear, who is here as well. Being selected to the Connecticut Music Educators Association All-State Music Festival is no easy task. From November on, there are multiple auditions for students to attend, in which they have to perform scales, prepare a presentation, sight read. The students work with college-level conductors, so this is serious business for high school students. To be selected, these students have to first audition and be selected to the Southern Region Honors Festival. So that's the first level, and then continue on and audition for the All-State Festival. Warren High had 2 students selected to this elite group, one from chorus and one from band. The festival is over a 3-day period in Hartford and is part of the Connecticut Music Educators Association State Conference. Representing Foreign's choir is junior Sam Martinez. Sam sings soprano and is a member of the Foreign Concert Choir and Advanced Vocal Ensemble. In addition, she plays violin in the Milford Intermezzo Orchestra. She was recently cast as the lead role of Tracy Turnblad in this year's foreign drama production of Hairspray. Sam has also been selected to the Regional Honors Choir for the past 2 years. So we really want to congratulate her for her achievement. While Katie's not here, I just want to tell you a little bit about Katie as well. She represents the band. She is also a junior and plays bassoon in the Foreign Concert Band and Wind Ensemble. In addition, she plays flute and piccolo in the Foreign Marching Band and tenor saxophone in the Foreign Jazz Ensemble. Katie has been selected to the Regional Honors Band for the last 2 years. So we want to congratulate both Sam and Katie. Both the foreign community and the Milford Public Schools are really proud of your achievements, and we know you're just going to continue to do great things.
Thanks.
So, congratulations.
Congratulations on seeing the play too. It was good.
Congratulations.
And Sam's mother, Mrs. Martinez, is here.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to student and staff. Now we move on to student reports. I believe Warren is first this month.
All right. So with our guidance update for this past month, our college acceptances continue to roll in. We've had students accepted to the United States Coast Guard Academy, Cornell University, UConn Stores, RPI, or Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute, Case Western Reserve University, Seton Hall University, and San Diego State University. In addition, we have over 45 scholarships available on the Foreign Scholarship webpage for students. And we'd like to congratulate Shana Arsenal and another student, Stephen Longley, for being nominated as the SCC Scholar Leaders for 2015. We also have Haley Bluhanich, Dana Shu, and Emma Bromley as selected for the CT Association of Public Schools Superintendent Award recipients for their service and scholarship at Foreign. And lastly, again, we want to congratulate wonderful Shana Arsenal for being selected to be recognized at the South Central Area Superintendents Association Award Ceremony in March.
Well, in other news, the Drama Club's presentations of Hairspray, the Broadway musical, were very successful on the 20th and 21st. A lot of people came out to see that. Also, congrats to our senior Sarah Shagru, who was named Milford's Miss Emerald Isle for 2015. And also, as Dr. Fieser mentioned, the music department will be represented by Sam Martinez and Katie Buckite for the Connecticut Music Educators Association All-State Music Festival. They were selected by auditioning for the Southern Region Honors Festival and then auditioned again for the All-State Festival. So congrats to them. Also, congratulations to all the participants of our Unified Sports Bowling Tournament, which was in Woodbridge this past February. That was also very successful. And seniors Amber Price and Emily Kahn were selected to be honored at the 2015 Connecticut Association of Schools Arts Award Banquet in April. Amber was selected for performing arts and Emily Kahn was selected for visual arts, so congrats to them. In addition, seniors Callie Borden and Kyle Lockwood were selected to be honored at the Connecticut Association of Schools Scholar Athlete Banquet in May. And at the annual DECA convention, 13 of Foreign's best young business professionals participated, and we came away with 2 first-place winners, 2 second-place winners, and a 4th-place winner, as well as 1 scholarship recipient. And the wrestling team finished second at Class M state championships, falling only 10 points short of the championship, which was a great end to their successful season. And the cheerleading team finished second at the New England Cheerleading Association Championship and competed very well at the state's meet last weekend. And last, the Foreign Giving Back Club has had a successful clothes drive and was able to donate 12 bags of outerwear and other clothing to the Bridgeport Rescue Mission. That's it. Thank you.
Jonathan Lott?
Hello. So we're going to start off with sports. It's been a fantastic month for our student athletes. Our very own Max Gurman was named the SCC champ for his weight class in wrestling, so that is a great accomplishment. Also, we have two Coleman sisters who both went all-state in gymnastics not too long ago, so that's a great accomplishment. It's very hard to do, especially in gymnastics. And speaking of gymnastics, our team actually placed second in their state tournament, which is crazy. And also our cheerleading team, who participated in the state tournament, or competition I should say, last weekend, placed 6th out of 21, so they were very proud. Tomorrow night marks our very first hockey game in the state's tournament. It's going to be at 7 p.m. against Fairfield in Bridgeport. And last but not least, our unified sports team hosted a basketball tournament last month in February. And it was a great competition and was a lot of fun. Law's own Kristen Connolly was chosen as CT Special Olympics Spirit of Life Award recipient, which is one of only 8 given statewide. The award is given to someone who exemplifies spirit, courage, and joy. And she will be recognized at a Hall of Fame awards banquet on March 25th.
Moving on to clubs, the Key Club recently worked at Minds in Motion on March 7th at Law, where we assisted children to learn in interactive ways. Coming up, the Key Club will be involved in the St. Patrick's Day Parade, the Leprechaun Leap on March 21st, and our Spring Blood Drive is going to be on March 25th. The Drama Club is now holding auditions for their spring musical, Annie. In the Media Center, we are promoting a new community reads program, One City, One Story, and this month we are encouraging students to read the book Wonder by R.J. Palacio.
Our guidance department has been very busy. They're in the process of updating their website so that there is a new tab. It's called What's New in Guidance, and it will allow parents and students to stay updated with the happenings in the guidance department. They will also be hosting a field trip on March 25th. Offered to the juniors so that they can go to a college fair held in Hartford. ASVAB testing, which is the test that they use for military entrance, has been continued, and the next test will be administered on Wednesday. On March 31st, Law is holding a sophomore symposium where they can begin discussing the college process and how it works with students and parents. And finally, preparations have begun for our rather large career fair, which is going to be held next month in April.
Lastly, it's a big month for our dances. We have Senior Cotillion, which will be this Friday, the 13th, and Sophomore Ring Dance, which will be next Friday, the 20th. We have recently inducted 12 students into the National Art Honor Society. This is a newly formed chapter, and their artwork can be viewed in the front lobby at Law, so we're very proud of that at Law. And lastly, Law is preparing for a huge event, Peace, Love, and Music for Marin, which will be held at Law on April 25th. This all-day event includes a fun run 5K, a kids fair, a kickball tournament, art competition, various food trucks, raffles, and live music all around Law. All of our students, faculty, sports teams, and clubs are preparing to create teams and spend all day raising money for the Marin Sanchez Memorial Scholarship Fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So before we move into public comment, this is the time where students want to depart and go home and do your homework. This is a good time to do so. It's a break in the action. And I'm going to read our public comment statement. Speakers may offer objective comments about school operations and programs. The board encourages speakers not to express personal complaints or defamatory comments about the Milford Board of Education personnel or any person associated with the Milford Public School System. Security issues and matters relating to negotiations and grievances will not be permitted. Consistent with the principles of the Federal Education Right to Privacy Act, discussion of students is prohibited absent parental waiver. Please be advised the meetings are live on Channel 78 and MGAT. And please state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Tom Jaginski, 27 Berkeley Terrace. I have 4 comments tonight. First, in January, when adding 2 academic support specialists to the high schools was discussed. When it was discussed, it was mentioned that it was in part in response to the special education review, that the review indicated that the high school should have an intervention program similar to the grade schools and middle schools. I reread the review, and there are no comments like that. The review makes clear that the intervention program in the grade schools and middle schools is a massive waste of money, and replacing it could both save money and improve academic performance, not only for special needs students, but all of our students. The last thing we need to do is to start duplicating an ineffective program in our high schools. Second, at last month's budget review with the Finance Board, statements were made about academic performance improving in our schools. There has been no credible evidence in the past year that academic performance is improving. The Advanced Placement Program was mentioned. I think this is an excellent program that should be continued, but it does nothing to address the fundamental problems our high schools have with academic performance. The most significant indicator last year was a dramatic decline in high school scores on the state science test. Since this decline appears to be caused by the change in high school scheduling that affected all subjects, this is actually a strong indicator that not only aren't our high schools improving, but in fact they are headed in the wrong direction. Third, with the implementation of Common Core and schools being held to more rigorous academic standards, there have been an increasing number of reports of schools cutting back on special programs in order to focus more time on reading, writing, and math. Milford is headed in the opposite direction. Once again, this board appears to be headed in the wrong direction. Instead of addressing the serious performance problems we face, you are ignoring the situation and instead opting for shiny new programs that will only make the situation worse. Our kids deserve better. Finally, I had asked for a copy of tonight's presentation on academic performance before the meeting so that I could review it and possibly comment. Your chairman of the board refused my request, pointing out that she wouldn't even let board members see it. How can the public and how can the members of this board prepare for meetings if they don't have access to the information? It doesn't matter whether this information is required to be distributed by Freedom of Information. Distributing this in advance is the right thing to do. I think the fact that the most important discussion that's going to be held tonight is kept secret until the presentation is outrageous.
Other individuals wish to address the board?
Kathy Burney, 96 Centennial Drive. I've got happy comments. Sue Glennon, I'd like to thank you for reaching out to me and discussing my concerns after the last meeting. I really appreciate that, and it shows good character, so thank you. The second one is Jonathan Law kind of touched on it. This past Saturday, the Milford Education Foundation, in association with the Connecticut Association of the Gifted, had their second annual Minds in Motion at Jonathan Law High School. Dr. Feeser was very good. She was our keynote speaker and did a wonderful job, and we had a lot of parents that were very impressed with your presentation, so thank you for that. Dr. Heidi Goldworkin, I'm not sure where she, also was one of the presenters at one of the classes too, so I'd like to thank her. But I have to let you know, I was the volunteer coordinator, and to show the character of our high school students, wasn't just Jonathan Law's Key Club, it was also the Keyettes, Foreign Highs Interact Club was there, and a lot of individual students that some of them didn't even need community hours, and they came there, and we are getting comments from, because a lot of them helped out in the classes, we are getting letters from the presenters that are commenting about the wonderful students that assisted. So a lot of you did not get to experience that, but I really think you should know that a lot of these kids are really good kids, and they do a lot of good for the community. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else care to address the board this evening?
Joanne Poffenberger. I live at 50 Green Street. And I just wanted to touch on one topic. I've had some conversations recently with my children. I have 4 children in the system, a 9th grader, a 7th grader, 5th grader, and a 3rd grader. And so we were talking about testing coming up because that's kind of the topic right now. My husband and I both are teachers also. So, and my son Elliot, who's in 5th grade, I told him that the CMT was coming. I'm a science teacher, so I think about science tests. But he said, oh good, so we don't have to do the SBAC anymore. And I said, no, you still have to do the SBAC, just the science is only CMT. And he said, I hate that test. And I wanted to ask him why. So I want to tell you what he said, because he didn't want to come and talk to you. And he said that he doesn't know how to think when he looks at the computer screen, that his mind goes blank, and when he thinks of an answer, he doesn't know how to write his answer. He starts to look for the letters of the words that he wants to write, and then forgets what he's going to say. So I guess what I want to ask you is to please implement some sort of keyboarding typing program in the elementary school so that these kids can be successful in a test where they have to type their answer. They just don't have the skills to do well on a test like that. And that's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address the board this evening? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment and move on to the chair's report. Before I go into liaison reports, I just want to remind the board that we have a special meeting on Monday. This Monday, the 16th, will be a workshop on redistricting, maybe our last, depending on what's presented and what how far we get. I also have had some conversation with MGAT. We've discussed this a little bit, leadership. Trying to straighten out the issues with our meetings not being consistently televised and what we can do to correct that. So we'll have some more ongoing conversation about that. Mrs. Griffin asked me to remind you all that this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. at Jonathan Law will be the CAPS Student Awards. Board members are all invited to attend, and if you could let her know whether or not you'll be attending, that would be helpful. And also, the St. Patrick's Day Parade is Saturday, so if you could let her know if you'll be marching or not, that would be helpful as well. Hopefully the weather will cooperate. Mr. Sadi was telling us that the weather forecast for Saturday is not that great, but, so let's hope that's not the case. All right, and then I want to move on to liaison reports. Mr. DeGrego.
Madam Chair, I respectfully request that we take 3E off the consent agenda.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. DeGrego. Liaison reports? None? Yes, Mr. Whiskeyman?
Just wanted to mention that ACE's budget meeting will be coming up next week, and their proposal includes a flat number for the tuition that they'll be charging. I believe Dr. Peters is already aware of those numbers. But that's good news for us because that means that they will not be increasing their tuition costs for their programs this coming year. So I just wanted to mention that. That's on their calendar for next week.
Very good. Any other liaison reports? I have a report for PTA Council. I attended their meeting on February 19th, and it was a very informative meeting. We had Paige Miglio, who is the new executive director for the Milford Arts Council, was there, and indicating that she's really hoping to participate and cooperate with Milford Public Schools and the PTAs on different arts ventures. Mrs. Benetti and Karen D, I'll say, from the, I can't say her last name, from Barnes & Noble was there speaking of the city's initiative, One City, One Story, and I happen to have the book that one of the student representatives mentioned, the book Wonder, which is the one read for the city of Milford, and Milford Public Schools are going to be participating. So any board members, if you want to participate, this is the book you can get at Barnes & Noble. It's called Wonder. And we also spoke about the upcoming PTA Council events. There's a career fair will be held on April 8th. They updated Dr. Fieser continues to meet with the parents, with the presidents before their council meeting, and they're very appreciative of that. They decided on their Lifetime Achievement Award winner, which will be formally announced, I believe, at the next meeting, right? So that was, as always, the PTA Council meetings are full of lots of information, so I'm happy to go to those meetings for the board. Okay, so there's no other liaison reports? All right, then we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Fieser, I'll turn the meeting over to you.
The first item on the agenda is the instructional division report and specifically the mid-year benchmarks. And unfortunately, Mr. Cummings is pretty ill. He's got the flu, down for the count. So I'm going to do the presentation this evening. I have to tell you, I'm a little rusty with some of this. But I have with me two principals who are going to help with a piece of this. Carol Swift and Kathy Williams. Also, Dr. Barbero, one of our supervisors, is here, as well as our supervisor of district improvement, Shannon Carlson. So there'll be times when I might turn to them to be able to speak more deeply about some of this, particularly the NWEA data. So I'm going to walk up over here. So tonight we're going to share mid-year assessment data in response to a board member's request. Actually, it was Mr. DeRosa who had asked, could it be possible that we bring forth mid-year assessment data, which we said absolutely. It's a little late, but that's because the board has had other agenda that has superseded this report. We're excited to share this data. One is it will give you a better understanding of 3 key assessments that our students engage in. And 2, we think you should be pleased overall with the performance of our students. Don't happen to agree, Mr. Jagodinski, with what you had to say, but we'll let the data speak to it. So with that, am I in your way, by the way?
No, it's fine.
You sure? So the presentation is going to cover, as I said, 3 different assessments. The developmental reading assessment, our district common assessments, I'm going to speak to each of these, and then our Northwest, what's the E stand for? Evaluation. Evaluation, thank you so much. Oh, Dr. Scarpetti, thank you very much. Assessment. And again, I'll speak to this in more detail. Just so you get an idea of what grade levels these are given at, so the developmental reading assessment is kindergarten through 5th grade. The district common assessments are 6 through 12 assessments. And then the Northwest evaluation, that assessment is kindergarten through 8th grade. So I'm going to begin with the DRA2. That's the acronym for it, Developmental Reading Assessment. First, I want to begin with the Board of Ed goals. You adopted goals around these 3 assessments in the late fall. So tied to the DRA, the goal is to increase to 85 to 89% our reading performance on the DRA, and that would be in grades 2 and 5. Again, we were going on the end of 2nd grade, kids moving on to 3rd, and then the end of 5th grade, kids moving on to middle school, and that using the 2014 as the baseline. And then also recognizing the achievement gap that we have, particularly with special education, is to reduce by 3 to 8 percentage points on the DRA, that gap between special ed and regular ed students. So, what you need to know about the DRA, it's given in grades 1 through 5, 3 times a year for grades 1 through 5. Fall, winter, and then in the spring. In kindergarten, it's only given twice a year. It's given in January, and then it's given in June. Actually, teachers and other professional staff administer the DRA to students in the classroom, and it is then scored by staff But there's groups of teachers that actually come together and they calibrate the scoring to make sure that there's some consistency across, grades, but also, across the schools themselves. And particularly on what's called the extended response items, which would be the writing pieces, because there could be so much variation if we don't make sure that we're calibrating. And then you see what this measures. A student's reading level, it's the accuracy of kids' reading, the fluency, their comprehension, those are all distinct skills. Some kids might read very, very accurately and they don't comprehend a word. And other kids, might be fluent, but they don't necessarily read accurately. So I mean, that's why reading is so complex and difficult to teach. And then obviously once, for example, in the fall, when the teachers get where are the students in terms of the DRA, they then can use that data, particularly tied to individual students in terms of making adjustments in curriculum and interventions and instruction in the classroom, etc. The data, so this includes 2 testing periods, trimesters. The elementary is on trimesters. They're not out in quarters. But really what you're going to see are fall data and winter data. And then you're going to see it disaggregated 3 ways. All students, free and reduced lunch students, and then our special education students. So with that, let's move right into the data itself. So what you need to know here is that the DRA, actually there's 4 levels of performance. There's below, approaching, at, or above. What we did for this presentation is we combined approaching or below and then at or above so that you can see the percents. And so how you want to look at this is on the left is the group all students, and you see the fall performance here. The blue is below or approaching, and then the red is at or above, and then you see the winter performance. So you want to see the blue decline, and you want to see the red increase. So this is all students, fall to winter. This is free and reduced, fall to winter. And again, you want to see the blue, and then you want to see the red. And this is special education. And what you see here is that you didn't see the blue reduce at all. Really, you saw this is, for the most part, flat. And again, so immediately there's real areas of concern here, and we know that our special education population, particularly in reading, this is an area of struggle. We also know grade 1 is one of the most difficult grades, I think, for kids. Remember, they're really beginning readers at this point. Grade 2, similar way. I can talk about some of the percents, but you can see that this is what you're looking for. Is this the red going up, and is the blue going down? Here's your all students, free and reduced, pretty flat in grade 2 here. And then here's special education. There was some decline in the percentage of kids in approaching or below, and some increase here in the 2nd grade, fall to winter, in at or above on the DRA. Grade 3, again, you see a pattern here. All of the students, there's an increase from fall to winter, and then in free and reduced. Whoops, I'm hitting the wrong button here. You see, again, this increase here, decrease here. In special education, you see there's just a significant decrease here in terms of the percent below or approaching, and then you see here above. Now here's an example, however, what you really want to look at is, okay, so how is this here? Because what we really want to see is the groups all up here. That's when we talk about the gap. That's what we're talking about here. Here's grade 4. Again, you see the gains here. Some gain here, some decline here, which is good. Here a decline, here's some gain, but again, you see that special education is really falling behind where other students are. And then this is grade 5. Grade 5 is where you probably see the least amount of gain Here, you see some, but it's not what we saw on the other grade levels. Some decline here. And then in 5th grade, in pre and reduced, pretty flat, maybe a slight decline here. And then in special education, actual, there's a decline here in the percent that we're at or above. And I don't know, well, neither of you are in the 5th grade, so I was going to say, could you comment on that, but I'm not able to.
Dr. Fieser, may I ask a
Yes.
question? Does the expectation change between fall and winter? Is it expected a higher performance to be at or above between fall and winter?
There is. Did you want to speak to that, Ms. Smith?
In every grade level, it goes up. It changes. It's not like 5 levels per grade level. It depends on what grade level you're in. So kindergarten, in the winter, we expect them to be around a level 2. In the spring, we expect them to be around a level 4. Whereas first graders, we expect them to come in at a level 4 and leave at a level 16 nonfiction.
Okay.
And there are incremental goals set at the 3 different times per year for every grade level.
So even if we see a flat performance, there's still growth for the students, even though if we see the red bars are the same.
If it didn't drop, right.
Okay, thank you.
I think also too, again, it's not my area of expertise, but I know that, for example, in 2nd grade, it's a huge jump to go to the 16 nonfiction, because in the 1st grade, they're not looking necessarily at nonfiction. So to make that jump for kids, most kids, fiction is much easier for them to work with. When they move into nonfiction, it's far, far, far more difficult as readers. So it's a huge jump. Kids can make the goal in terms of the fiction piece, but not the nonfiction piece. That sometimes becomes the real hurdle for kids.
So in 1st grade, 16 nonfiction is a tough hurdle because you go into the nonfiction text. But our curriculum has been very responsive to that. So the kids are doing better and better each year with that. What's happening and what happens in 2nd grade is at the very end of the year, they do a 28 nonfiction. But what's different in the assessment is instead of it being an oral response, they do their very first written response. So that's also a big hurdle for the kids to learn how to get all their thinking captured in an organized manner, which again is something we're addressing in our curriculum, but it's a big jump in 1 and 2.
Question? Is there any way you can ask the 5th grade teachers and just reporting to us about why there's not that dramatic of a change and it's more, consistent amount? Or maybe Dr. Spaghetti can answer that from the West Shore. I don't want to put them on the spot, but maybe you can ask.
When it comes to NWEA, I'd be more than happy to, but I have 6 grades.
Sorry.
I should note, with Mr. Cummings' absence tonight, I think if we have outstanding questions, we said he could perhaps address them
at the committee of the whole meeting. So what we'll do is
just make a note of that and address it then. That's
just
fine.
kind of what those questions are. It's a good question.
Yeah.
There again, see, that's where I'm not able to respond.
Not.
But it is a good question because you see in the 5th grade, it's very different than 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and as far as the amount of growth.
Right, my expectation would have been that we're 5 years into it. So I think maybe the impact should have been better because they're getting that much more foundation of building upon.
What we don't know, though, is what is expected, and the 5th grade standard may be.
Right, and just that's
yeah,
what I'm
so that's what I
asking.
think we need to find out.
Okay, thank you.
I can just interject. I know a little bit about as you go up in the grades. In 5th grade, I think there's only like 2 or 3 levels to go through, whereas in the lower grades, there's several levels to go through, and they're very complex. So there's not a lot of movement always. So it speaks to your point where you see the special ed drop. It's partly related to the fact that there isn't that incremental piece that works in the other grade levels.
Like a 4 to a 16, which is from kindergarten to 1st grade, whereas in 5th grade it may be much smaller.
It's much smaller, and
so
it's
we
very
can find that out.
Okay,
which is and you'll see it happens in the NWEA in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, where and NWEA tells you you're not going to see the growth at that point. You see it in the elementary, and then so. Okay, we'll get an answer to that question.
I have a couple questions.
Sure, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Actually, one comment and two questions. The comment is in terms of nonfiction, increasing those levels. If there's more science infused into the curriculum in the younger grades, that's going to excite the kids about wanting to learn how to read and about wanting to learn the science. And I think you'll see big improvements in terms of the nonfiction.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly, and while, again, I don't teach at the elementary level, I can tell you I don't know how many times I'm in elementary classrooms, and when kids can do their independent reading, how many kids go to, you know, books on sharks, books on bears, books on, you know, different kinds of you know, space travel or whatever it may be, nonfiction. It's astounding to see that that becomes so much of their interest level for the independent reading. But you're right, science instruction, absolutely. Kids, literacy is critical in it.
I would just interject. One of the things that's changed dramatically in our classrooms over the last 3 years, I would say, is the number of nonfiction texts we've added into classroom libraries. In fact, enhancing all of our classroom libraries has been a focus for the district and for school principals to just get more books in there so the kids have more variety and more of those texts available to them. And we've found exactly that they do love those books, and it's made a big difference.
But also beyond the books would be letting them do experiments so that the students, even addressing the special ed population, you're going to get them more engaged in the learning, and then the literacy can come after that. And my question is, in terms of the looking at the special ed and also the free and reduced lunch scraps, is it possible that we could take them out of the all-student chart so we could see that data separately, and also we could see the number of kids that we're talking about
Sure.
here?
Yes, we can do that. So you want just purely how those students did, not against anybody else, but just how they did?
No. You have all students, and then you have the free and reduced lunch students, and then you have the special ed students. So I think it'd be important to see students that aren't in the category of free and reduced lunch and special ed.
Okay.
Pull the special ed out of the rest so we can see.
So non-special ed and non-free and reduced.
Right.
Okay. We can do that. Okay. Oops. So just some reflections, so if you looked at all of the grades, the good news is that from the fall to the winter, we saw gains in almost every single grade level and among free and reduced and special ed students, with the exception, I believe, of one grade. And this is not what we would necessarily have seen, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. There would have been real inconsistencies. And, I attribute that to the fact that we have a really solid, consistent curriculum that's being delivered K through 5 in literacy curriculum, our Readers and Writers Workshop, and it just is growing stronger every year. And we are really seeing the impact of that on our students, on their reading and on their writing. And the evidence is bearing that out. Yes.
So, do you have data from before you were here in terms of the DRA2s, so we could see the change that's occurred?
I'd have to ask Mr. Cummings. I don't. The DRA2 is actually a new version of the DRA. Am I correct on that?
We've had it for a while ago, I think.
No, but I meant before the reconfiguration 6 years ago. I didn't think the DRA2 existed.
No, but I thought she was referring to before you came.
Okay, we'll have to check on that. What I will say to you is that Okay, we could look at that. I was going to say because of the reconfiguration, but it wouldn't by grade level, it wouldn't have any bearing.
Right.
So we can ask Mr. Cummings to take, for that.
Okay.
Okay. We are seeing kids increasing more quickly, which is also good. The free and reduced, while there is some gap, the fact of the matter is that we're really seeing some gains among the free and reduced students. Again, we have interventions much more consistently now in place at the elementary level than we did 4 or 5 years ago. And so we believe that that's also contributing to the success of kids. Continuing with the reflections, in special ed, one of the things that we know we have to work on is that less than half of the students are reading at or above grade level. That's a real concern because they're going to continue to lag behind. You will see that the middle school does a yeoman's task in terms of pulling kids up, but it's still not enough in terms of them being on grade level. We also are doing work with special education around what are called the individual education plans on special education students. So every special ed student has a plan with very, very specific goals. Much more attention being given to ensure that those goals are aligned to the kind of literacy curriculum and literacy goals at each of the grade levels so that there's, again, continuity there. And also, I know that the special ed teachers are working much, much more collaboratively than, say, 4 or 5 years ago with regular ed teachers. I know that Mrs. Kelleher and Mrs. Kennedy, who's a supervisor at the elementary level, have probably been in more regular education classrooms around literacy this year than you have for many years to gain an understanding of literacy and that need for collaboration between and among any teacher or interventionist who's servicing kids. And then our next steps, what we do when we look at this data, when principals look at the data, I mean, they really analyze it, break it down by grade level, by teacher, and they're looking at it from okay, where do kids really do well in certain areas of the DRA? And then just like, okay, what was going on in this classroom that enabled this kind of success? And that's where, again, more and more teachers are collaborating, looking at the data themselves, I think. And starting to draw upon it so that they're not working in isolation. And then also looking at where do people fall down. Again, not with the idea of really pouncing on people, but to kind of say, kind of like what happened here. So that's what we mean by looking at the strongest growth. And then the other side of it is looking where kids really fell down. What are the instructional practices that are really leading to success on the part of kids? And then developing professional learning modules. We keep having, new teachers coming in, et cetera. We want to make sure that people are up to speed and delivering the curriculum, being able to use the data, understanding, what strategies are best for particular aspects of reading, and then obviously providing supports for the students who are in the greatest need. So that's the DRA. Does anyone else have any questions on that? Then I'm going to move to the district common assessments. These are given in grades 6 through 12. These assessments are what we call internal assessments. And they were developed by our own staff under the supervision of our supervisors, like Dr. Barbero, working with teams of teachers around developing these assessments. And we're only in our second year of using these district common assessments. What you may not remember, or some of you are brand new, you wouldn't know this, the state, when it mandated the new teacher evaluation plan, part of that had to be that a percentage of a teacher's evaluation had to be tied to assessments other than the CMT or what will be the SBA, the Smarter Balance Assessment. You know, an internal assessment or another kind of an assessment, but it couldn't, there had to be a percentage of the evaluation, which I think is about 22.5%, am I correct, are tied to that, and so for grades 6 through 12, this is the district common assessments. So that's not the reason why we created them. We wanted to create district common assessments, but it just so happens that while we were in the process of doing this, the state then said this needs to be a part also of teacher evaluation. So you have a goal around district common assessments, increasing to 85%, an average student performance score of 3. And you'll understand that all the district common assessments are scored on a 4-point rubric. So the goal is to have 85% score at a 3 on average, a meeting standard, and again on all just 4 district common assessments. And you're going to see why there's an average, because there's specific, more than one area that kids are assessed in every discipline. So, and they're scored on each of those areas, and then there's an average taken from them. So, district common assessments, again, they're in core courses, grades 6 through 12 for this presentation. They're actually, we have district common assessments in actually all the disciplines, although they're not completed 6 through 12, but for example, art has district common assessments, technology has different common assessments, etc. For this presentation, we looked at the core areas. All of them, regardless of its art, math, social studies, are all scored on a 4-point rubric, and you can see the rubric is below standard, approaching standard, meets standard, exceeds standard. These are given fall, winter, spring again. And then for each discipline, the teachers develop rubrics, scoring rubrics for each discipline. So the social studies rubric differs from the math rubric, differs from the science rubric, etc. Again, it's all a 4-point scale, but the rubric itself and how students are scored differs depending upon the discipline. And in some cases, depending upon whether it's middle school or high school. So we'll begin with English. So let me first just, English, like elementary reading, very, very comprehensive. So in reading comprehension in grades 6 through 8, absolutely critical, and this is a definition of what is involved in reading comprehension. To analyze, again, multiple text, different kinds of documents that kids would be looking at, and being able to analyze those for the relevant information. Be able to write an essay, but not like Raven did, where it's out of the chute and you just do it in those 2 hours, but you really are able to plan how you're going to write it, you do your research, you write your drafts, etc., and then citing direct and inferential information from the text itself, evidence from the text itself. Critical that we look at where's the evidence for whatever position that you're taking. In grades 9 and 10, this would be for English 1 and English 2. They're looking at, again, varied text, what's the central idea, again, analyzing meaning and tone of the text through language that's used, and then producing an analytical argument to convey concepts using evidence, again, organization and analysis of content. And then for the upper grades, English 3, English 4, AP language and composition, and AP literature and composition. 2 or more central ideas, analyze meaning again, and then produce an analytical argument to convey concepts, etc. Not easy tasks for kids. So here are the 5 areas actually that students in English are assessed on. Statement of purpose or focus, the organization of their writing or their responses, the elaboration of evidence, the language and vocabulary that they use, and then the conventions that they use. So this is middle school. This would be a combination, these scores, a combination of all students in grades 6 through 8. are here. And, you know, what you see here, the different colors are, whoops, the different colors are these 5 areas against which they are assessed. Again, language and vocabulary, the organization, conventions, etc. And you can see these. Here's the fall, here's the winter of all students. Same thing laid out the same way as the DRA was. Here's the fall free and reduced, here's the winter free and reduced. Here's the fall special education, here's the winter special education.
One quick question.
Yes.
My same comment on that I have with the DRAs in terms of pulling the data out. So showing us, and I don't think you have to print it, but maybe you can just send it electronically. But I think it's useful to see 6th, 7th, and 8th separated, and also to see students in the category of not free and reduced and not special ed separated. See what's happening.
Okay, we can do that. Other questions?
So similar to the DRA, does the standard also move between fall and winter on these assessments, or is it the same standard and they just get closer to it?
It's the same, these here remain the same. These 5 areas remain the same the kids are assessed against.
Okay, but are they expected to do more in the winter than they did in the fall?
Absolutely. Do you want to speak to that, Director Bergero?
Yeah, so the tasks change. It's those indicators, but with different tasks.
Okay.
So as the year advances, the tasks get more complex.
Okay, so not only are we seeing the results score higher, but the assessment is more challenging. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? So here's the high school, and you will notice again, these 5 areas are the same areas, middle school and high school, again, for students are assessed. And what you see again here is fall to winter, fall to winter, fall to winter. What is interesting here is that there's not a huge difference between free and reduced and special ed in high school here. Some difference here, obviously. I'm going to turn to math. Overall, students in mathematics have to demonstrate proficiency in developing and applying a variety of strategies. Multi-step problems they have to solve, and not what they call non-routine problems. There are 5 areas in mathematics. Now you'll notice these are radically different than English, to be expected. So, whoops, keep doing that. To make sense, make sense of the numbers or the problem itself and persevere, attend with precision, model and use the tools, the appropriate tools and strategies for solving the particular problem, be able to reason and explain how they arrived, or the process that they used, and then see the structure and being able to generalize from various problems that they might be given. This is middle school. And here you will see, again, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, fall, winter, free and reduced, fall, winter, special ed, fall, and winter. Here again, not a huge difference here. Some here. Certainly are not the gaps that you saw in the elementary school, particularly between special ed and regular ed. And historically, the middle school has really done an incredible job with respect to pulling up special education students. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
A lot of hard work, but we are addressing it. We spend an incredible amount of time with our students that aren't quite making it in some sort of an intervention or some sort of a extra support to try to get the students to understand where we want them to go with material, and then give them a little extra time, a little extra support, and
continue to work on it.
Dr. Goldorkin?
On the math charts, I see that the level for all students is a lot lower than on the literacy charts. Can you speak to that? You see the scores between 1.5 and 2 at the middle school and just for the fall.
For the fall, and then they're up to
going up.
over 2, almost to 2.5 at the winter. So I'm not sure what you want us to address. Maybe Dr.
Well,
Betty can address some of it. I'm not sure what you
what
want.
my question is. The free and reduced and the special education students' scores are closer to the all students ones in terms of the math, but the overall scores, the placement of the all students scores is a lot lower on the math than it is on the English.
On English. Right. I can't speak to that, except for that I know that as kids move up through the grade levels, math becomes more challenging. I think your question about breaking it out by grade level may be able to give us some indication, because we can't see it here.
Right.
But I do remember it was a similar thing last year, the first year that we shared this, that the math overall was lower on this 4-point scale here than the other disciplines were. Did you want to say anything?
No, I think that it's important just to know that, you know, all the students have specific strengths and areas that we need to improve on. There's actually some special ed students that could blow the water out of a math test. So it's really choosing, and this is where we analyze the data where it's really important. I think Dr. Fieser reminds us this constantly, but just to all of you so we know where we're coming from with here. When we do a teacher evaluation plan, 45% of the teacher's evaluation plan is based on that performance of what they're doing. So the district common assessment, which Dr. Fieser is going over now, and as she stated, is not in just in these areas that she's expressed, but in all areas. So when we meet with our teachers, they set goals from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Right now, and actually it's probably ending, we do our mid-year evaluations with our teachers. So we're looking at these scores right now. They're analyzing the data not only with all the student population, but going on to the grain size of individual students, where they are. And right now we could be saying, I could set a goal as a teacher and predicting my students are going to be here. If I already met that goal, we as administrators are setting that goal even higher now. Because we've talked about that SMART goal, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. So this is the work that we're doing right now, and these are the scores that we're using. So it may be different, it's a different test, of course, math compared to reading, but it's really the analysis that the teachers are doing with their groups and during our PLC meetings at this time, and evaluating where those scores are and where those goals are. So you're going to be seeing differences depending on the students and the strengths of the students.
Do you have a question, Mr. DeRosa?
I think you had your hand up.
I did also. I think the charts are really helpful because for me, I mean, pictures always say a lot, but I'm not clear how this ties into our goal. So if our goal was based on 85%.
So we said 85% of students would on, whoops.
Yeah.
A score of a 3.
Okay.
Or better is what the goal is.
Okay. So is there a way to tell what percentage of students are at the 3 today? So that we know if we're in line with our goal or not? Because I don't see a percentage on there.
No, I mean, you know, no, because this is overall, all grades 6, 7, and 8.
Okay.
And again, by the 5 different areas against which kids are assessed.
Okay.
So we don't have that data, but that's, when we go back to the goal, that's what we're looking at here, is that the goal had to do with, you know, the kids would score on average a 3, on average meaning here. So a student may be a 3 in sense and perseverance, but maybe not quite in structure and generalization, but then they might be a 3.2 and something else. So it's on average is what they're talking about here in terms of getting to a 3.
Okay. So is it possible to see where we are versus the 85%?
We probably could. I think that, again, truthfully, we know we've got a ways to go. You know, I mean, if right now on average across the 3 grades we're at just about a 2.5, we have a half a percentage point to really bump this up. So I mean, we could look at that, but I think it's it would be probably more in terms of let's look at it by grade level. You know, where are the, you know, what is the percent, et cetera. And again, I think that that's the kind of data that Dr. Scarpetti would have teachers be looking at. Where are your kids right now in terms of those 5 areas, and you know, where are they on this 4-point scale? Is what's happening as we speak.
So that's a lot of the conversation that we're having during our mid-year meetings with staff, asking them where their students are at this point, looking at that data. Okay. What's the plan from now until the end?
Okay, if I can jump in too. Just to piggyback on what Dr. Scarpetti said, these are growth models. So if a student came in and everybody got a 4 on the standards the very first time we did this in September, we would then be upping the expectations and requirements. So this is something that by May, we're expecting all students to reach these benchmarks of 85%. But if they were already reaching them, we would be putting in a different task and more challenges. So this is about a year's growth within our subject area at that time.
Okay. And if I could just chime in quickly, my understanding of this was to be a mid-year check-in, so it wasn't meant to be as in-depth and specific as our annual reporting is.
Because annual reporting would actually look at, okay, where were we in 2014 at the end of the year, and where are we this year at the end of the year? This is really reporting out, which we do. Every one of the schools looks at it. So how have our students done growth-wise from September to January, for, you know, fall to winter, in as far as their growth in these areas.
So you just answered one of my questions about last year, this year. Two other questions I want to ask. One is, are there any glaring red flags right now in any of these 5 subject areas that we run the risk of not reaching the 3, or at least the minimum 3L standard of 85% or more?
Well,
and that's maybe just a
again,
general.
I would just look at this and I would just say for sure that reasoning and explaining is something that is really a struggle, even though this jumped up. And actually, Mrs. Williams, you're the math expert here. That's what you taught for years and years and years. Can you speak to that?
Sure. Reason and explain is one of our focus areas. We don't seem to score as highly there. In looking at some of the student work, I've seen students would like to just give their answer, and now we're really holding them accountable for finding why that is and telling us, explaining what that process is. So it's not about, and at the board presentation with the little second graders that were here, you could see where they were actually learning about why their answers were the answers that they get. So we're trying to get students away from just telling me what the answer is and actually explaining what it is. So once they get an answer, they then have to write out what that explanation is, and they're getting scored on that writing process of it. So it's a little bit different from what they're used to, and some of it is reluctance. They don't want to have to write in math class. So we're actually working on that, but that is the one area that.
Right, and I can remember sitting in on classes with kids who will just say, well, I just got it. I mean, that's the answer. Well, how'd you get it? Well, what do you mean, how do you get it? Like I'm stupid, like I didn't know, which maybe I am, but didn't know how to get the answer. Because they're not accustomed to having to explain what's the thought process that went into you getting to that point.
If I can go back to that presentation with the second graders, I was very excited that evening because a lot of what they did, I spent years doing in a 7th grade classroom. Those students were actually applying some of the properties of mathematics. And that's something that we never touched upon until 7th, 8th grade. So to see their cumulative property, I forget what the little explanation was, but it was brilliant from a 2nd grader. So.
But to digress, Mrs. Williams, within 2 weeks after that presentation, sent her math teachers down to the elementary school to see 2nd grade, 3rd grade classrooms. Yep.
So maybe if you go to the next slide, maybe
sure.
We don't have any but high school advanced. That's
this is high school?
That's the high school.
Yeah.
So to me, that's more major for concern where, number one, we don't have that broken out by grades and where the students are. And secondly, you know, there might be some juniors and seniors in there that are running the risk of not meeting that as an individual process. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, they might not have the time or they just may barely scrape by. I would expect that that'd be more of a red flag to us because they don't have that many more years to go. And maybe if we can get feedback of the same question I asked about the middle school, the same question about the high school, maybe get feedback from the principals.
Sure.
From that, because that to me is more of a concern.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not concentrating those efforts to bring those opportunities, because to me, that's a big gap to make up.
I agree with what your comment, but I also want to point out the higher up in mathematics you go, the more abstract the math becomes. So again, to reason and explain, now you're taking something that is very abstract and you're trying to reason through that. So it would be scored the same way, whether it be an Algebra 1 class, an Algebra 2, a geometry. So you're talking about very different types of mathematics, but you're still asking them to apply those 5.
I understand. I'm just saying, is there any red flags?
Absolutely.
That's all.
Actually, we could also ask Mrs. Swanson, who's the supervisor of math, to actually speak to that.
Right.
And I forgot to mention, these do, all of this all represents Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and geometry, combined, again, performance-wise.
Okay. And the one other question I had is, and I know you can't get the, is there any way we can get this information listed by school, aggregately by school? I'm sure you have the numbers in there.
I mean, we have it. To be honest with you, we don't generally report out by school.
Okay.
We look at it, obviously, the principals. I mean, you know, Dr. Scarpetti looks at his own building, et cetera. But we don't necessarily publish it. We publish it in terms of, you know, here's how the middle schools functioned, and then the individual schools do.
Again, the only reason I'm asking is because this year the principals will be held accountable to that building from a state perspective, and I just want to, I'm asking because, you know, again.
Sure, they were also held accountable last year. They all had to write, you know, student learning objectives and tied to, so some of them wrote them in math and same kind of a thing, this percentage of kids in 6th grade will, or this percentage of 7th graders, or this percentage of students in, you know, the 9th grade in Algebra 1, et cetera. So they're held to the same standard as it's a different evaluation model, but it's the same standard as the teachers are.
Could I ask, am I to understand that the way I'm looking at this is as our younger students are being acclimated and taught things in a different way, much different, I think, than what some of these high school students may have learned. So I would expect that as the years go on and these students move up the system, these processes are going to become more easy, will be more easy for them to handle as they get into more complex courses.
So next year will be the first year that we'll get the students that went through the investigations program.
Going into 6th grade, they will have had the whole full complement of the math investigations, which is very different from the math curriculum that these students had. Okay. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Sadie. Mr. Sadie has a question.
I do have a question. Go back to the slide, please, Madam Chair, through you to
Dr. Fieser would like to take this. When you look at this one slide and you analyze it, so let's look at all the second scores. It's much harder, you guys know the further, but all students and special education and free and reduced appear to be all exactly the same on the second, which would be the winter score. And how could that be?
And we raised the same question, and I can tell you that Mr. Cummings checks those figures over 3 times over because we raised the same question. And what I would say again is that, well, I'm going to say a couple of things. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Algebra 1 students who would be represented here would be students coming out of the middle school who would not be in the top, the higher group of students, because there would be kids who would be taking Algebra 1 in the middle school, who then would be in geometry or Algebra 2. So that's might be one factor, is that your percentage in Algebra 1 is not necessarily going to be your higher end. But, you know, in terms of the free and reduced and the special ed, I don't have an answer to it. I mean, I reacted the same way, and I know that Mrs. Benetti did, because she's the one who actually finalized this entire presentation, and she raised that question, and I know Mr. Cummings went back. But I think that that's a really good question that I think that Lisa Swanson, who's our supervisor of mathematics, could answer in more detail than any of us were able to.
Thank you.
If I may, in the same vein, I mean, I look at this chart and I say, gee, that's great, we've closed the gap, but at the cost of everybody is performing lower. So, you know, that's not the way we want to close the gap. If that in fact is what we've managed to do here. Of course, we have the third final results at the end of the year to see how everybody performs, and I think it looks like a challenge, you know, to go from where we are to where the goal is for the end of the year. And if all of those groups can achieve that kind of a jump, I think that would be spectacular. But it does worry me a little bit that, you know, we may achieve the one goal of closing the gap, but at the expense of the performance of the total. So that's not the way we want to do that.
It's a good question. I think one of the questions that I would like to ask Mrs. Swanson, going back to something that Dr. Barbero said, if everybody came in and was scoring at a 4, then in essence the standard is too low. And so you need to up the ante. And it may be that the standard in mathematics is very, very rigorous. And the expectation is it's going to take some time to move.
I want all of our students to be engineers, you know.
I hear you. I absolutely hear you. But I mean, my point is that I think we need to hear more about that. Because as I said, I also remember a year ago well, actually in September, you heard the report. Mathematics also was the group that was, I would say, not lower than where a 3 is than every other one of the disciplines. So then it raises the question of, okay, so what is their standard? And it goes back to the question that somebody else raised, in as far as, you know, is any of this also impacted by the fact that the standards have changed pretty significantly in mathematics? And so are we seeing some of the impact of that, because we have kids who are kind of caught in between the new standards and then still trying to move into the, still some are with the old standards because of so much curriculum that is changing. I don't have an answer to that, but we can ask again, Mrs. Swanson.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Science. That they would, you know, be able to demonstrate, you know, evidence-based explanations, use multiple sources of evidence, and consistent with scientific knowledge, principles, and theories. That's overall. This is grades 6 through 8. The areas that they're measured on, here's 3 areas. Their ability to articulate a claim, the use of appropriate evidence to support that claim, and the use of reasoning again, reasoning all the way through, that draws in scientific principles to connect evidence to the claim. So this is the middle school. So in contrast to math, here is science, and what you see fall to winter, all students, some real movement here. and certainly in all three areas. The claim articulation is the strongest, followed by elaboration, followed by reasoning. Again, reasoning, same as in math, same as in social studies, if my memory serves me correctly. So there's a theme here with respect to kids' struggle. Here's an example also where the free and reduced is kids, there's no gap here, and there's a very little gap here in terms of science in special education with students. And again, some of that I have to compliment the middle schools, which historically have really done an incredible job in terms of pulling kids up. When you move to the high school, again, middle school was grades 6, 7, and 8. When it gets to the high school, and again, they're demonstrating proficiency not only in what we saw in the middle school, but also now in planning and execution of systemic scientific investigations. The high school, what they're measured on is formulation of a goal for an investigation, valid experimental design, the variables, being able to identify those variables and controls in doing an experiment, and then collection of observations and data. So all of us sitting around the table, when we did scientific experiments, or I'll talk about myself, we didn't have to do any of this. We were just handed the lab. It had follow step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6, and here's what it should look like. There really wasn't much thought in it because you just follow the formula. This is very different what is being expected of kids in science today. When we talk about the high school, this data reflects biology, chemistry, and physics. And you see the variables down here again, the four variables down here. And you see the gains. What you can see is that in setting a goal for an investigation, that's the area that we're strongest. And it looks to be sort of neck and neck with respect to observations, the data that's observed, and then also the variables, the issue of variables here. A little different with the free and reduced, and certainly with special education. You could look at this and you could say to Mr. Wiskingen, this is a little bit maybe higher than math, but there's a ways to go to get to free performance. Yes.
Is this including the AP bio and honors bio and all levels of biochem and physics, or is it?
I don't think so, but I'll get an answer to that. I think it's straight biochemistry and physics. I don't think it's AP, but I will find out about that. Social studies, and we have Dr. Barbero here to speak to this, but again, demonstrating proficiency to think historically, crafting arguments, chronological reasoning. Here's the reasoning again, comparison and context, and historical interpretation and synthesis. This is in grades 6 through 8. So you see there are 4 areas. Being able to develop a clear analytical thesis, being able to work with all kinds of documents, organize them, use them persuasively, being able to use historical evidence, and being able to do an analysis, point of view, bias, purpose, etc. And these 4 you will see are in both 6 through 8 as well as 9 through 12. There's an additional one in 9 through 12, but these 4 are consistent, 6 through 12 in terms of social studies. So here's the middle school performance. You'll see there's a significant gain here, fall to winter. This is a grade 6 through 8 again. And you see that thesis is the strongest, and that's the strongest in all 3 areas. Followed by, it looks like, the use of documents, which I know that students use a lot of original source documents and all different kinds of documents in their work, and you can see this. And then obviously, and there's some consistency here, this is then followed by evidence, although their evidence seems to be stronger than in some of the other disciplines. And then the last piece is the analysis. which you can see is, analytical thinking becomes very, very difficult. So this is the middle school performance, grade 6 through 8. And then again.
Dr. Fieser, Mr. Sadi has a question.
Sure.
Madam Chair, through you, to either Dr. Scarpetti or Dr. Fieser, why is the analytical, the analysis section of it so low? And
So
how, it looks like one of those red flags, and it's a red color also.
What we did here is we took the advanced placement skill sets. College Board says to be successful in social studies aligned AP classes in high school. Those are the 4 areas. We can go back. The crafting historical arguments, historical reasoning, comparison and context, and historical interpretation of synthesis. And their rubric, we use an advanced placement rubric that College Board designed that has the 4 indicators: thesis, document, historical evidence, analysis. And we use that same rubric, 6 through 12. What changes within the rubric is it's altered developmentally, so that a 6th grader might have to analyze 4 documents to get to the 4 exceeding the standard, whereas a 7th grader might have 5, an 8th grader might have 6, and a high school might have 11 or 12. And so the skill sets are more challenging. And again, to talk about what Dr. Fieser's been saying, and also what Mrs. Williams, the analysis is the thing they haven't done in the past. It's a more new skill. We've focused so much in the past on reading comprehension. So now we ask, yes, we know what that document says, but why would somebody say that? Are they aligning with the king? Are they opposing, is it a religious document that's opposing the science? Is it trying to sway someone for an election or a point of view? And so when we get into that type of analysis, that's not the way kids have come to us typically answering questions. So we have a higher mountain to climb with that topic.
Dr. Scarpetti, have anything to say, or are we all set?
No, I'm good.
Thank you.
Dr. Booker hit it right on the head.
And again, these are all establishing a baseline. To give you a more specific example, our 6th grade spent a lot of time and did an amazing job on those 4 skill sets last year. So my 7th grade teacher said to me when we started off the year, the kids are already coming in at a higher level than they ever had before. So then what we did to the 7th grade rubric is we made it more challenging, because this is about growth and rigor and teacher performance. So if every kid came in September with a 4, I don't have anything to give them. And how would I measure my own personal growth? So the idea here is to establish challenges and to constantly push the envelope, particularly with the advanced placement work. So that's why you see the scores the way they are. And at this moment, this mid-year, we're checking in on that. So we establish these goals. How are we doing on that? How far are we coming? Do you expect to get there? What can we do to help? And so we're always analyzing our own work. This is a constant growth model. It's a constant growth model. Thank you for that question.
I just have a question. With the example given earlier of if every student came in at a 4, we'd know it was too easy. Do we do other comparisons of our standards? Do we compare to any external benchmarks? You know, how do we know that we're at the right place? Do we look at comparisons with other districts or state data, or is there any kind of external benchmarking that goes on?
Well, we do it with the NWEA, which is coming next.
Okay.
That's nationally normed, so we can compare ourselves to the nation with that data.
That's in terms of that performance, but I'm asking about these standards. They're internally developed, right?
The rubric is national,
okay,
and the standard indicator strands are national, but to my knowledge, we don't compare them in any way with other towns or national.
Okay, but we're using something national.
Yes, the rubric is the AP rubric,
mm-hmm,
and in world language, which I also in charge of, it's the state standards that we have embedded there. So it's state and national, but I'm not sure we compare them across other towns with our performance.
Okay, no, that answered my question if it's coming. I just wanted to know any external sources.
Other questions?
And then this is 9 through 12. You see the 4 that you heard before. And then the last one here Again, these are the areas: thesis documents, historical evidence analysis, and the last one now for 9 through 12 is comparison, that kids can make, comparisons. Again, historical comparisons, document comparisons, argumentative comparisons, etc. So when we look at the high school, now this is all social studies classes, all elective as well as required. What you see here are fall and winter again with all students, and again, free and reduced and special ed. Here, the comparison piece, interestingly enough, among all the students is the highest. It is the second highest for free and reduced, and it is actually the fourth, I guess, in special education. And when you look again at where's the piece that's the lowest, it's the analytical piece again, which Dr. Barbero just spoke to.
The comparison piece does not need documents, so sometimes kids catch on to that and mess that. So in for example, the history of crime class, it's comparing statistics of, say, an urban and a suburban crime rate, things like that. So it doesn't have a document to read. Sometimes the documents are a challenge.
It requires them to be able to read and to analyze. So, and then the last core area that we're looking at is world language. So in grades 7 and 8, this would only be Spanish. And you will see that for all world languages, engaging in conversation and correspondence obviously is critical, providing and obtaining information, expressing opinions. And again, it's the idea of at least one language other than English. So grades 7 and 8, you have 4 areas against which kids are measured: comprehensive writing, grammar, vocabulary, and task completion, meaning how thoroughly students complete the task. Now, here's what we see for the middle school, and what we see, we do not have special ed here because the numbers are so small. It's really invalid to show them. But with respect to middle and high school, middle and, all and free and reduced, again, what you see is overall, these students actually are above a 3, and then the free and reduced students are edging up there. And in as far as the strongest areas, vocabulary and comprehension, grammar, it appears as if is more of a struggle, so not that much, but it's more of a struggle for both groups here. In the high school, again, these are the same, the learning expectations here. However, the areas to be measured, there are 7 areas in high school language classes against which kids are measured. So the comprehensive writing, grammar, vocabulary, and task completion, that's the same as in the middle school. But here, mechanics, which is your errors in usage, discourse, how they're writing, the variety of their writing, etc. And then language control are areas that high school kids are measured against. So when we look at, this would be high school, these would be all of the languages that are taught at the high school.
Latin is more written. So students could respond to this in oral translations, but Latin would use the rubric strictly for translations and writing.
And if I remember correctly, you told me it was Latin 2 and French 2?
Yes.
And then Spanish 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's what is reflected here. And here, what you see is vocabulary and task completion, pretty similar to the middle school. Not a huge gap, but there's more of a gap, obviously, in the high school than we saw in the middle school. And then this is those, I should back up. These are for the 4 areas that you saw in the middle school. This next slide are the last 3. So this is in discourse, mechanics, and language. And what you see is mechanics is the higher score, and then followed by language, and then by discourse. This over here is pretty neck and neck, and you can see there's not much a difference here between free and reduced and all of the students as far as their performance. So when we look at just some reflections, again, we're seeing growth, which I'm glad Dr. Barbero underscored that. That's what we have to remember. This is a growth model. That's why kids are giving it. It's not a one score. CMT was one score. You took it in March. That was the sole score, period. This is you take it in the fall, you take it in the winter, and you take it then at the end of the year. And hopefully we are going to see significant growth on the part of all kids. And so the good news is we are seeing growth, but you see that there's variation depending upon the particular areas against which kids are measured. Free and reduced lunch kids are demonstrating growth on a pace ahead, even in some cases, of all the students. Special education growth is happening, but not at the pace that we would really like it to occur, particularly in some of the disciplines. Again, some of this is the same as you saw on the DRA. I mean, it's looking to see where do we see success and learning from those successes. And then, where are the groups that are, or the individuals that are really struggling, and what are they struggling in, and taking a look at how we're addressing that. We want to get kids themselves to make more use of the rubric. We really want to embed in the practice of teachers, again, this is only in the second year, so it's new to them, that they're using this rubric daily so that kids become really familiar with it. I'll take it out of the classroom and say that there is hardly a teacher in this school system, and if we find one, it's because they're new, who doesn't know the teacher evaluation rubric backwards and forwards, because it's used constantly. Not only for their observations, it's used in their mid-year assessments, it's used when oftentimes when they're working in their professional learning communities, where they'll refer to it and say, so what is it to be highly effective in this particular area? It's used in their planning. They know that rubric, is my point, and it's really impacted on teacher instruction, teacher dialogue, etc. It's the same thing that we want to see happen in our classrooms, so that kids familiarize themselves with the rubric, so then they can start to assess themselves. They look at the rubric and they can start to say, well, where would I fall, in analysis, or where would I fall in use of language in terms of world language, or in mathematics in terms of reasoning. Where do I think I would fall on that rubric of a score or of 1, 2, 3, or 4, scale of 1 through 4. And then again, with the struggling kids, to really look at, okay, let's look at the curriculum. Does it need to be modified? Again, are there interventions that have to be developed? So now we're going, the last section is the NWEA. The NWEA, you had a goal. You increased by 10% the number of students meeting projected growth performance on the NWEA measurement of academic performance. So it's their MAP test in grades 2, 5, and 8. I want to underscore here projected growth. That's what the NWEA measures, growth of kids, fall, winter, spring. And we give it in grades K through 8. And you can see it measures students' reading and math performance against the Common Core state standards. It's computer adaptive, and what that means is if the 8 of us here were to sit down and take the NWEA, if Dr. Barbero was hitting answering every single question, the questions keep getting more difficult. If I, on the other hand, am answering questions and I'm not succeeding, then the questions, I'm not going to continue to get that level of question. The level of questioning will differ. It'll be less rigorous, because what NWEA really tries to do is to find out in a very true form, where is my performance level? So that's what we mean by adaptive. Did I get that right?
Yes. Can I ask a question about that? So the adaptation doesn't mean you're going to get a better score because you're getting easier questions, right?
Right.
Okay. Does not mean
with
that.
a RIT score that's relative to your performance. So if Dr. Fieser was getting every question wrong, or her test was getting easier and easier as she answered incorrectly, she'd have a lower RIT score than, say, Kathy, who got many correct. And that's where we'd see their different level of performance with their single RIT score.
And we'll explain the RIT score. They will explain the RIT score. Okay, so again, measure student growth. Links the vertical scales, they work with scales across grade levels. Again, measuring growth in equal intervals, and this will be explained when you start to see the data. Not in grade level measures. And then, interestingly enough, NWEA ties growth to direct instruction in their subject areas, math. So it's really a connection to instruction. And they shift their emphasis to application. So when you talk about learning, what you'll see is you'll see real growth as we go up through the grades, through grade 5, and then in the middle school, the growth it really declines because at that point, the kids are applying, but the scale isn't even large enough for kids to be able to do some increase, but you'll see that the growth isn't as much. And again, that'll be explained in more detail. You'll see, and we'll talk about this, on the charts, there is what's called a mean growth and a projected growth. So the mean growth is the average growth of all students in the grade level based on fall. So fall is the mean growth. And then the projected growth is, once it determines what the mean growth is, it tells you then what your projected growth should be. And so actually, so you see, where you were, but where are you supposed to be then come winter is what NWE tells you.
And if I could just interject, what it's relative to is the grade level that you're in, and also given what they know with the normative data. So children who have a RIT score of 125, say at the beginning of 2nd grade, the normative data shows that by winter, they should have grown this many points, and by spring, this many points. So it's based on what they know about previous performance of kids.
And again, we broke out the data by all special education and free and reduced. So this is the reading growth. And I'm going to turn this over to you to talk in more detail, because I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up.
Sure. So if I could just point out here, good evening everybody, by the way. If I could point out here, so in kindergarten, the projected growth is 8 points for half a year. So they would say that in a year's time, kindergartners should grow 16 points. And the mean growth for Milford kindergartners was the average of over about 9.5. So you can see that we exceeded the projected growth, which is good news. And this is for reading, and this is for all students. Grade 1, we met our projected growth, which is valuable. When we first looked at this, we thought, oh no, we just met our projected growth. But it's a real accomplishment to be able to meet your projected growth as well. You can see in 2nd grade, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and on, we exceeded the projected growth rate for reading for all.
Before you switch that, can you speak to the fact that the question that Mrs. Federico asked, that this is, so the projected growth is really against national norms?
It's against national norms, yes. Yep. And there's such a storehouse of data in NWEA. Tonight we're going to talk about overall district performance, but for me as a principal, this tool allows me to see how my school compares to other schools across the nation, to schools within Milford. It allows me to look at classroom level performance. It allows me to look at student level performance. It also gives a student percentile ranking. So one of the huge advantages for NWEA is it allows me to see, for example, how high performing some of my students are. So I've always known, okay, yes, this is a bright child, but when I see that they're performing in the 98th percentile, I know we have a lot of work to do to be sure we're challenging that student. So what I love about NWEA is it really lets you see how each child is performing at their level to be sure that you're seeing relative growth for all kids. Your super bright kids and your kids who might struggle a little bit more than others. Anything else, Kat?
No, but the point that you were making before in the blue, when you see a chart and you see these decline it makes you a little nervous. But where a kindergartner might, or it's projected that they're going to score over 8 points, when you get to the 8th grade, it's far less.
And again, that's Norm's data. That's from average. That information comes from looking at the performance of kids across the nation.
So it doesn't mean that they're really scoring lower than the kindergarten kids.
Right.
It just is talking about how much will they grow in a given year.
So again, I agree with Carol. NWEA gets very exciting for us, and when I see something like this in 6th, 7th, and 8th, and I see that dip in 7th, that's where I go, so why?
The other thing that, as a principal, that I love about NWEA is that, you know, when we have DRA, there's a goal level that all kids are aiming for, and some of our kids just aren't going to make that level for whatever reason. And what's great about NWEA, you know, as you're working throughout the year, you know the kids are making gains, but it's not showing up on the DRA. What's great about NWEA is it shows you growth for each child relative to their own fall performance. So you'll see in some of our special education data that relative to where that child placed in the fall, what's normed growth for a child who operates there in the fall, you'll see that we have some impressive scores, which is encouraging for the children and for the teachers who work with all different level kids. And sometimes you just get frustrated because you feel like we didn't make the DRA goal for this particular child, but then the NWEA will show you that the kids really did make nice gains. So here's our special education data, and you can see, again, you know, if the gold is above the blue, then we have met our growth. So you can see our strong areas would be K, 3 on up. Grades 1 and 2 has been a topic of conversation for us across principals, with Mike trying to figure out what's happening in grade 1 and 2, where our kids, although they're making, you know, 7-point growth, they're not making that 10-point growth.
This is an example of what I was saying to you of what happens when kids in the middle school. And you can see in the middle school just these huge increases on the part of special education, which is a real reflection on the middle school teachers and principals. And this is something that for a number of years the middle schools have really been doing. And so you see those gold lines just really jumping there. And I don't know, Dr. Scarpetti, if you want to jump in here at any point.
Oh, we're doing a great job.
Okay. Well, actually,
Mrs. Federico has a question.
Could you talk a little bit about why the 6th grade special education score growth is higher than the all?
There's no all in this, is there?
I'm sorry, well, I'm looking at the previous page, because in the printout we have the 2 on the same page.
To the left is the previous page. Oh, all, okay.
So this is all for reading.
Yeah. So flip back for a second. I was just looking at the starting points.
It looks like that's true. If you do this quickly, you can see that it's higher in a few of them.
6 and 8 seem to really stand out.
Right.
There could also be, you know, we'd have to look at the sample size. So for example, this usually a number of special education students is going to be a significantly, obviously, smaller number of students than the overall. And so, you know, when you have a smaller group, depending upon the performance of the smaller group, it can either pull the group up or can drag it down pretty quickly, which is what happens. And I don't know what the sample size is here, but that's something we can look at.
Okay. Plus, the other thing to remember is that it's the amount of points the kids grew relative to their baseline point. So maybe, and I don't know, maybe the special education student's entry-level RIT score was 120, and the average of the other kids was, you know, 140. And this, you know, the special ed kids on average were able to make a 10-point growth they might still be performing below the other kids, but they made incredible growth for where they came in. And that's, again, what we love about NWEA, because it measures the kids from where they're performing at, as opposed to trying to reach a specific goal. I don't know if that helps.
No, that helps, thank you.
So if we look at our free and reduced, again, you can see that at every grade level, it looks quite nice, with the exception of grade 1. We didn't quite make our projected growth rate for free and reduced. For math, all, same thing, you can see here the difference, you know, kindergartners, for half a year, they're supposed to get 7.5 points. For grade 1, just above 9 points, and then you can see that the expected growth rate, or the projected growth rate, goes down. And you can see that our mean growth has exceeded almost everywhere. Grade 4 and 5, it's a little bit just slightly below here for all. Special education for math. You can see that from grade 2 on up, very strong. And for K and 1, we're not meeting our projected growth rate for special education. And for free and reduced, it looks quite strong, with the exception of grade 5, where it almost meets, and grade 8, where it's slightly below. So if we think of those RIT scores, again, it's based on individual student performance. It's similar to an SAT score. It's an achievement scale, again, relative to the student. It helps to measure growth over time. What I love about it too, so I can look at individual student scores and I can see that a child came in kindergarten performing in the 70th percentile, in first grade got up to the 75th percentile, then, you know, as they traveled on, their percentile grew. So I know that we are challenging that child and increasing their growth over time. And I can also look at that percentile on individual students and see just the opposite, and then know that we are not keeping them learning at the rate that we would want to. We have a score that means the same no matter the student's age or grade level. So what's so nice between elementary and middle school is that we're talking the same language when we're talking about NWEA versus DRA, then going on to the formative or the common assessments. It's the same language where we can follow a child over those 8 years. With the RIT norm, what NWEA predicts will be a student's progress at a given time of year and a grade level. So again, that's that normative data, that projected growth rate. So here, if we take a look at the RIT score comparison for reading, you can see that we're looking at the mean RIT norms right here. So these are the national norms right here, the red. So this is how the nation is performing. Then the yellow is Milford overall. And then the green would be the mean RIT for special education. And then the purple is for free and reduced.
So one of the reasons why I think that this is so important is that here, this is not our own teachers scoring their assessments. This is a nationally normed test. So we're comparing ourselves to, you know, where should we be against national norms? Thousands and thousands of students who are taking this, and what we're seeing on the NWEA is that our students are achieving higher than the national norm. Which I don't believe, we didn't do the NWEA 5 years ago, but I don't believe we would have all been there.
And even looking here, you can see our free and reduced is matching the normative scores. in most areas. Any questions on this?
What does RIT stand for?
It is the Roush unit. It's just.
It was named after the gentleman who created it, so it was just a short term.
Okay. It has no meaning other than to NWEA.
Ms. Ellie has a question.
The national scores and everything that we're looking at here, and we're comparing ourselves to the national scores. I mean, if we listen to NPR and CNN and all that, over the past few years, we've heard that our national scores are lower than international scores. So if we're doing a little bit better truly than national scores, are we really doing better educationally? Because educationally, nationally, compared to globally, we're really not where we used to be. Our scores are much lower than they used to be. Are we approaching where we were? I mean, if we're just showing ourselves to be above the national levels, and national levels have dropped over the years, and in comparison globally, you know, if we're going to use national, we've got to use global. International, you know, and international students are doing better than American students. Are we truly doing better?
I think what we have to ask the question is that, you know, is the NWEA considered to be an assessment that would be more in line with international versus national? And I don't have an answer for that. I want to say yes, only because it's a really reputable. It's used by lots of districts that are high achieving, et cetera. But we can find out an answer to that. It's a good question. It really is.
In addition to Mr. Pacelli, it's aligned to the Common Core state standards. So again, these are new standards. Some of them are new, in which it's raising all the standards. So as I agree, it's a great question, but I do think the students have risen, and this NWEA has aligned that with the Common Core state standards, which are very rigorous, as you know.
How long have we been using NWEA now?
Well, we've probably been doing it about 3 years, but we've really been using it. I mean, I know it was piloted the second year, I think, that I came here. So I think it's been about 3 years, but we've really been starting to do comparative data in the last 2 years with the data.
I think K2 was the last to start using it, and I think we've been using it for 3 years and really learning a lot about it these last few years.
Mr. DeRosa has a question.
This might be a stupid question, but why don't we have 9 through 12 listed?
We have used it in 9th grade, but I think because of all the changes in testing, and then with the district common assessments, we sort of said time out. You know, and then meanwhile, right now, the state is again wondering with respect to the testing, because there's a lot of pressure around, you know, that the SBAC is being given in junior year as opposed to sophomore year. So that's the reason why. As I said, we had started to give it in 9th and 10th grade, and I believe we still give it in 9th grade. Again, Mr. Cummings can address that. But I know we're really looking to see what is best for the high school.
So if you have it in 9th grade, is there any way we can get the results of the 9th grade? And the reason why I ask that is, again, I think it goes back to one of the questions I asked previously, with the transition from elementary, middle to high school. I saw some results about math. I think one was in science, maybe the other one. But how, and I think Mr. Wiskin asked the same sort of question, that we're going to be challenged as a district to meet those 3L standard of 85% or more. To me, I think it would be beneficial if we can see grade 9 at least, maybe not 10th, 11th, 12th, but at least grade 9, so we can see where that transition goes from elementary to that first year of high school. Because to me, it should be on par with grade 8, possibly even greater or higher than what grade 8 is listing right now. So if I can ask that question.
Again, yeah, and I'll address that with Mr. Cummings.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions on this slide, or up till now?
So here's math. Again, looking at the red is the written orange for the nation. And the yellow would be for all of our students, the green is special ed, and the purple is our free and reduced population. So our mid-year reflections on NWEA, okay. What we're able to notice is that all students consistently meet or exceed growth projections. After lagging behind peers in the early grades, special ed and free and reduced students make the greatest gains in upper elementary and middle school. The RIT score comparison shows that all students consistently are exceeding NWEA norms. Free and reduced lunch students are close to norms, and special education students are below norms. Some next steps. What we do work on is identifying the classrooms where the highest percentage of students are meeting or exceeding the projected growth rates, and then looking at what's happening in those classrooms, and then trying to carry those practices across all classrooms. Utilize NWEA planning resources to support students' identified needs. So I know Dr. Fieser talked before about how there is a way to directly impact your instruction based on NWEA. There's all kinds of resources to go in, put in your entire class and see where the different levels of students are performing with specific standards in math and in reading. And I think there's 4 breakdowns for math and 4 breakdown areas for reading where you can look for specific goals that you can work on with kids. So it's directly related to instructional goal setting and practices. We're going to work with the students to set growth targets for the spring. Kathy, did you want to talk to that a little bit?
Sure. I actually did that from the first test to the second test, our fall to winter. And the test, as soon as you click that you're done, will produce a score for the students. So before our students went in to test, they had a little 3x5 card of what their first score was, their first assessment score. So they knew immediately. And my leadership team decided that maybe we should offer some sort of incentive. So we told the kids for every point that they improved, we would give them a raffle ticket. And at one lunch, we drew some raffle tickets, and our PTA was generous enough to give us some gift cards. And our students, I think more important than a little gift card, it was the growth that they noted themselves. They were coming out of those tests very excited, knowing that they had grown and how far that they had grown. So we're looking to do it again with our spring NWEA score. But along with that, I think the conversations that teachers were having with the students was very powerful, because now everybody was working for the same goal, to see that improvement. And our kids really embraced it. So it was great to see them. It was great to see them come to the cafeteria excited that they had just come from NWEA, and they saw how many points that they grew. So it was nice.
And just to kind of add to that, one of the things that we know about NWEA is kids can go on there and they can click annual answer and get through in 10 minutes. And then what we would be doing is operating off of invalid data. So it's really important for us to be sure the kids know how important it is to do well on this, because if we're going to be using this data, we want it to definitely reflect their actual abilities. And so we've learned things through the different testing cycles. So we learned, for example, when we looked at one class that was performing so poorly on a mid-year assessment, we looked back and there was a substitute that day. So we learned when there's substitutes, kids never take the NWEA because they just clicked through it. And then we had invalid data in our hands. So just little things like that that you don't think of until you're looking at a report and saying, what happened in Mrs. Smith's class? So different things like that. It's really important to get the kids' actual best performance so that we're operating off of actual accurate data. Examine the use of NWEA planning resources to support SRBI intervention programs. And again, there's all different kinds of resources within NWEA. If you just want to venture into that website that was posted at the beginning of this, it's just a warehouse of all different kinds of data analysis of your school, of the district, of individual students, and then all different ways to use the data to set goals for individual students, for classrooms and the like.
So, lastly, I mean, just overall, you know, what we're wanting to do continually is to increase staff's ability to use the data. What we're realizing more and more is that the more familiar the teachers are with the data that they have, and if you go back to a year ago in the budget, you supported our purchasing whatever was needed to create a data portal. And and there's lots and lots of work that's going on around that, but so that teachers can go into a data portal and see all kinds of data on their students, not just in terms of this year, but in terms of previous data. And then what does that mean with respect to the classroom itself and the implications for their planning of instruction, the instruction that they do, the interventions that they do, the kind of differentiation, et cetera. You know, I spoke about the issue of rubrics with the district common assessments. To me, that's just absolutely critical that becomes part of it, because then kids will just own so much more, you know, what's being expected of them. And when they go to take the assessments, it's not like, oh, I'm taking an assessment. It's part of the work they've been engaged in all along. Collaboration among the teachers is absolutely critical, and we're seeing, quite frankly, we're seeing a huge, huge increase in collaboration. I can say to you that, you know, I came in 4 years ago and there was not much collaboration among teachers. Or if they were, it might have been teachers who were friends with one another, but not necessarily formalized collaboration among within a grade level, you know, or across schools. You know, and now teachers are just clamoring for time to be able to collaborate, because what they're realizing is the more and more they work together on really substantive work, the stronger their instruction becomes. And then, of course, our curriculum. I mean, we're constantly looking at our curriculum. We'll look at it again, you know, this year, for example, on, you know, all the district common assessments, but you know, the data will be taken by the supervisors and also by department heads, et cetera, to look at it and say, okay, so is there an issue here with respect to our curriculum and what we're teaching tied to performance, good or not so good? So, I mean, and there's much, much more work. I just want you to know we take the data really, really seriously. I have, you know, I told you the principals set measurable goals tied to their data. I've sat in now in 2 mid-year assessments as observing the principal conduct a mid-year assessment with the teacher. You know, I was with a principal a week and a half ago with, you know, a teacher who was maybe in the 4th grade, I think. And I mean, and the expectation was that teacher was bringing in his or her data from the classroom and then going through student, you know, who were the students that were having the greatest struggle, but they also looked at the students in terms of who were on the IN, and did those kids continue to grow from September through June, or did they remain flat? You know, did they maybe decline, even though they were still, you know, meeting standard? Did they go from above standard to just meeting standard? Lots and lots of questions, you know, next steps relative to individual. I mean, you know, and that was the expectation on the part of the classroom teacher. Also the expectation on the part of the principal. So, you know, we have a lot more to do in the system, no 2 ways about it, but I can tell you that there is very serious and purposeful work going on around this.
Okay, any last questions? Ms. Federico?
As we're talking about different assessments and tests, if I could just get a sense of if there's any concerns about how much time the kids are spending in testing specifically. And if you could just give me a sense of the things we've talked about tonight. I know they have the state test, the CMT, and the SBA. The NWA sounds like it's a test in the terms of a standardized test, but the district common assessments and the DRA, do they really feel like they're sitting and taking a test, or is that more embedded in their curriculum?
So, Go ahead, DRA.
So the DRAs are done individually with each student, and the fall DRA probably takes the most time because you know the kids might have dropped over the summer, or if they're new to us, you know we need to find out what their reading level is. But mid-year and year-end, the teachers are working with the kids and they know what level to go in and assess the kids at. So it might take 15 minutes, 20 minutes to complete the DRA assessment with a student in the winter or in the spring, one-on-one, while the other kids are working on whatever it is they're working on. NWEA, it usually takes 2, sometimes 3 half-hour sessions to complete the assessment. So they'll go into the computer lab 2 days or 3 days in a row. What we do now, the kids will go in for the 2 days, and then if there's any kids left over who still aren't finished, just those few kids will come back. So it would be in most cases 2 half-hour sessions in the fall, in the winter, and then in the spring.
Is that the same in the middle school?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the same for the NWEA. And then for the district common assessments, which I think you've asked also. That's a great question. It'd be interesting to see if students, because it's really embedded into the curriculum, it'd be interesting to see because my impression would they would probably think they are taking a test, you know, just like a test that they would take at the end of a lesson, that they would actually fill that. But
so is it like a period in length?
Yep.
Sometimes they do it the period, but it might be over a few days.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Mrs. Federici?
Yeah, and the state tests?
Well, the CMT is one session, and I think it varies in time depending upon whether it's elementary, middle, or high. But it's one, you know, like one morning, maybe, you know, an hour, hour and a half. I don't really quite remember in terms of the science piece. And for the Smarter Balance, that's, again, the time factor in terms of an individual test differs depending upon the grade level, but that actually extends over a number of days, not all day long, but there may, you know, the math may take 2 different sessions at certain grade levels. There's writing, there's language, there's a reading, there's also a listening component, so there's more actual discrete assessments. So it's more time.
Okay. I mean, from the presentation, I really see the value of the data, but I do want to know, are there any concerns about the amount of time?
I think we all have concerns around the length of time of the Smarter Balance. I think in particular, quite frankly, for the junior year, we have concerns because the way the state is doing it, we're hoping that they're going to change this next year, is you cannot give it to the juniors before you've completed 80% of the school year, which is very late. It's like the last week of April is the first time we can begin those tests, and then that bumps up against advanced placement, and then it bumps up against the district common assessments, and then that bumps up against the end of year exams, the final exams at the high school. So that probably is where the greatest area of concern is. The other would be is that we are going to be replacing, and Mr. Cummings will talk to this more, the DRA, although we haven't yet settled on what we're going to replace it with. So they're again being conscious of what's the time piece that might be involved in that. So we really are sensitive to it because we don't want to see kids spending weeks in testing throughout the year.
Okay. Have you heard anything from the state? When I went to the CABE conference last fall, there was some rumblings that they may do away with the Smarter Balance for the high school and replace it with an SAT. I haven't heard that they're going to do away with it. What I have heard, although it will not apply this year, is that one of the things that they're looking at possibly, again, the state can't make the decision independent of the legislature because it's in the law, okay? That you know, students have to take the state test. But what they are looking at is, for example, in lieu of the Smarter Balance for 11th graders, could a student's SAT exam score count?
or if a student has taken advanced placement literature, for example, and scored a 3 or better, could that be then you would waive Smarter Balance? So those are things that have been sort of tossed out, but there's been absolutely no decisions on that. I think they're probably going to pull together people to really sort of take a look at that. So this year, it is that all juniors are to take the Smarter Balance.
Okay, thank you.
Just following up on this in a general sense, you have the test itself and the time spent the testing, these formal tests, and then the time spent preparing the students for that test. I mean, focused time that might or might not be also considered educational time in terms of focusing on the subject matter. So the time that we spend in testing and preparing for tests is something I think I agree that we should be cognizant of the implications of that, and perhaps to some degree have a sense of measurement. The children spend 1,000 hours in school during the school year. You're talking about 180 days and all the time. So how many hours of that time, what is the percentage of time spent actually in testing? If it's 10 hours, well, it's not too awful bad out of 1,000, but if it's 50 or 100 hours, that's not good. And I'm sure every teacher in the course of going through a lesson at some point gives quizzes or, we won't call them formal tests, but some kind of instrument to help the teacher understand, did the class get it? I mean, and this is something that constantly, you wouldn't really call these formalized tests in the normal sense. They're just aids in helping to say, is the pace going right? Is the subject get across? Can I move on? Kind of a thing. So I think it might be worthwhile exploring and coming to understand the amount of time, graded in terms of actual hours spent taking tests, and then some kind of an understanding of how much time are we spending preparing for this test. Some of it might be valuable in another sense. I heard one mention about keyboarding lessons so children can take tests on the computer better, which in and of itself has value apart from the ability to take tests, because keyboarding seems to me to be a skill set that our future generation is going to need, unless we get totally verbal with everything. Talk about computers being, just talk to them and they'll take care of everything. I'm waiting for that to happen. But I just in a sense of it, I thought as you continue your examination of this subject, perhaps a little bit of thought about coming up with some kind of a measuring stick about how are we doing in terms of how much time we're doing on this, and how does that balance out against the time spent focusing on the education and subject matters.
Well, the one thing that I would say to you, I agree that in the past that has been the case. It was the case, I think, all across the nation. Too much time spent on teaching to the test, so to speak. My hope is for the district common assessments, we're not teaching to that, but it actually becomes embedded as part of our curriculum. You have NWEA, you cannot teach to. SBAC, you cannot teach to. I mean, we're talking about adaptive tests, et cetera. It's more teaching the curriculum. And we made the mistake, I don't just say Milford, it was everywhere, where we talked about, teachers would come in and say, okay, today we're doing CMT, da-da-da-da-da. Well, that should never have happened, but we made those mistakes, and we should not, hopefully we won't make those mistakes again. The reality is if a test is really a good test, advanced placement is an example. If it's a really good test, yeah, you want to teach kids so that they're able to really achieve at that particular level. But that's assuming it's really substantive. But the kinds of testing You know, it's really, do we have good curriculum in place and do we have good instruction going on? Which then should enable our kids to be able to do well on the test. So, I thank you for your patience. I have the expertise.
Mr. Grego has a question.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Dr. Fiza, thank you for that presentation. I want to make a comment, but it's going to be short. I want to thank the school staff that came tonight, Dr. Navarro, principals, Mr. Scarpetti, Dr. Scarpetti. And, you know, as one teacher to another, when I went to school to become a teacher, there was a German expression when you deal with middle school kids. It's called Sitzfleisch, meaning kids don't sit still. And I'm not pitting one principal against another. You're all equally very good to me. I just want to say in one comment that what Miss Williams said about the raffle, bravo, Miss Williams. That is a novel idea. Anytime you can get a middle school kid focused to improve himself, I could feel the stimulation in your voice because I love stimulation, and that's what I try to do to my students. Thank you. That was a novel idea. Not to take away from the other principals here.
I agree.
But that was novel. My hat's off.
Great.
Okay, thank you. I have a question, Dr. Fieser. In light of Mr. Cummings not being here, would it make sense to put the graduation policy first reading on the COW meeting?
We could do that. We absolutely can do that.
That makes sense?
Sure.
Okay, so let's, we'll take that off of this meeting and put that onto the COW meeting when Mr. Cummings is here.
Thank you so much, folks.
Thank you.
I don't know what I would have
Yes,
done
thank
without you. I was on the email today begging, please.
You do? Oh.
So
that needs a recess. Can we take a quick recess?
Sure.
Maybe we can move more to the middle while she's out.
Well, we have action on the academic calendar, so we need to wait for
I think we can move that to the session.
Oh, okay. Never mind, she can leave. We're not going to have a recess.
Okay. So we want to move to the graduation.
We're going to move the graduation requirement off of this agenda and put it on the COW meeting.
Oh, I meant, yeah, I'm sorry.
So the academic calendar number 3.
Right. I'm sorry. Spacing here. So this is the second reading of our proposed 2015-16 academic calendar. And, you know, without reminding you of everything, I just want you to remember that the big difference, a big difference here is the 3 professional days at the beginning of the year, which we thought would really work out well with reconfiguration to be able to do the orientations, and we think it could benefit the middle school and the high school as well. Other than that, quite frankly, you know, it's pretty similar to what we've done in the last 2 years of the calendar. I've already shared with you that next year we'll have far less flexibility because it will be a regional calendar. Although the regional calendar that we thought was going to be voted on, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Wiskeman, is now been pulled off the table. That's what my understanding is, and they're revisiting it because I think there's some serious questions that have been raised. I know I raised some questions to it because I thought they were starting
You
way
weren't
too late.
alone in raising questions.
So, so this is what's being proposed, and the hope is that, you know, you will support it and adopt it.
So are there questions on the proposed calendar for next year? Yes, Mr. Wiskeman.
I just note one question, one line. In the notes along the side, when you get down to November 26, 27, it says Thanksgiving holiday, and then there's an early dismissal staff and students line underneath that, which doesn't really make sense to me because I think those are holidays.
Oh, yeah, that probably belongs, that's a misprint maybe? It belongs with November 25th?
Well, the November 25th has an early dismissal staff and students, which does make sense because that's a half day.
Right, so
thank you for that catch.
That's the only thing that really jumped out at me.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? All right, seeing none, I'll ask for a motion. Mr. Sadi?
Thank you. I make a motion the Milford Board of Education approve the 2015-16 academic calendar as proposed by administration with the one change on November 26 and 27.
Is there a second? Mr. DeRosa seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously.
The next item is the food service financial report, which Mrs. Faustus will give to you. And then also, she will ask you to take action on the healthy food certification, which annually we have to do this for the state. Mrs. Faustus.
Good evening. The first is the financials for the food service program. Does anyone have any questions about the financials? We are mid-year. We are experiencing, it is a tough year with new requirements. As you've heard me every year say, we have more and more requirements of what we have to do for the Healthy Hungry Free Kids Act. So we are experiencing higher food costs for a few reasons. It doesn't look like we're in the same position as we were last year at this time, but there's so many different factors that go into it, whether it's, if you spend more on food, and I've cut back on some labor, and you have to manage the repairs and things like that. So that's the short version, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yes, Mr. DeRosa?
One question, I don't know if this is me, because I heard something about, but from page 17, in the background, it speaks about the incentive benefit Milford Food Services next year will be $57,000.
Are you on?
That's the next agenda item, I think, right?
I'm trying to rush ahead.
Yep, that's the next agenda.
I'll hold that.
Just a quick question. You mentioned you were not in the same position as last year. Can you just, I wasn't on the board.
I was thinking just in terms of finances and.
Okay.
One of the things.
I'm not trying to, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
If you were just looking at January to January, it looks like we're losing money, but I don't intend to lose a lot of money by the end of the year, is what I'm saying, is that I balance things to make sure that we break even or make a slight profit. So that's, I don't want you to be concerned about that, but that's all.
So it's just a sense that we are in a looks like we're slightly worse than at this time last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's food cost is up and a few other things, but we're gonna be okay. Okay. That's all I wanted to let you know.
The other thing I wanted to add is I'm not sure that the new board members know that the food service budget is not in the Board of Education budget because it's self-functioning.
Right, so we make it work. We don't come to you and ask for money, so.
So the month by month of each month stands alone, right? So in December of 2013-14, actually this December we made more than last December.
Yeah,
right? So it looks like it's kind of evening off a little bit.
Money comes in at different times from the state. So one month, last year we got a big deposit in December, this month we got it in January. So it all evens out by the end of the year, but it can fall at different times. So it's not there's no real concern at this point. But financially, it brings me into the next topic if we're done with this.
Any other questions on this, Mr. DeRosa?
I just thought of a question in my comment you made. You said you balance this possible cutting labor. You made that comment?
I did for this year. We did cut back on a couple of positions through attrition. So what we did this year is instead of making sandwiches and salads centrally at Jonathan Law, we moved those people into Jonathan Law's high school staff. And then each elementary school is making their own sandwiches and salads. We prepare the materials at Law, and then we, but this on site, they're making their own sandwiches and salads that they're able to, personalize more. So, but it did save on labor in anticipation of spending more on food.
Other questions on this part of her presentation? Okay. All right. Vaughn?
Okay, the topic is the Healthy Hunger, It's getting there. Everything's healthy for us. This is healthy food certification. This is the 10 cents per meal that we get from the state if we follow the healthy food guidelines. So every year you get the opportunity to vote as to whether we should do this or not. So we've done it for 3 years. It brings us about $63,000 a year. If they add up all the meals we served last year and they multiply it by 10 cents. So we want to serve as many meals as we can because then we get more money every year. So it only affects things sold to students during the school day. You can exempt things that are events like a football game or concert, and that's what you've done in the past. So for those types of events, you can sell whatever you want, but you have to today say that we're going to exempt this, that you are going to exempt that, and then we will follow, everybody in the school district follows the healthy food guidelines, whether it's a school store or the food service. But we get 10 cents per meal for now. It is on the list of Governor Malloy's list of things to eliminate this year. So we could be doing this just to do it, and we may not get any money next year, but we need to act on it in order to get the paperwork in place, but we don't know if it's going to be here next year.
Yes, Mr.
So
DeRosa.
that brings up an obvious question. What if? What if?
What if? Well, then I'll have to look at the overall with the lunch prices and anything we sell separately, the a la carte prices, and likely have to go up on our prices.
So how will that affect any of the current students that go to school now from a financial point of view? Is that?
How will it affect the students?
Yeah.
Well, for next year, if I increase the pricing, then parents will pay more and students will pay more for the foods we sell.
So has there been any communication that this might happen or might not happen in preparation
It's
for them?
only been out for like a week or two, so we haven't, there was some hearings in front of the education committees, but I haven't heard anything.
We have, through our professional organizations, are making the legislators aware of our opposition to it being cut. And there's a lobbying effort going on at several different levels, but our local legislators are aware of the fact that what it means to us as a district and what that will mean to the families if we have to raise prices as a result of that.
So again, when would you communicate the effects of that? I mean, my personal opinion is I'd rather the parents know before the school ends sometime, they should be aware that it's in legislation, because I'll guarantee they don't know.
Right, well, this is only a piece of the income that we have, so we have to wait till the end of the school year to determine what, if any, price increases that we would have. So,
hopefully the legislature will have voted at that point.
they would have voted, so then we would know that we were missing at least that chunk of money if they do vote to eliminate it. But we still have to consider all the other factors and all the other pricing and expenses that we have to cover it.
I agree with you that we would want to let families know.
And that's all I'm asking, whether up or
Sure.
down, to me, because as a parent, if I'm already on a fixed income or a budget, and I'm not going to say, okay, buy this sandwich, it's $2.50, now it's $2.75 or $3.
Right.
I mean, $1 is $1.
Right.
And
We would usually let parents know in the summertime, usually in a flyer of some sort, that what the prices are for the next year.
Okay.
And you would also be letting the board know before we would let the families know.
Right.
You would be coming to the board to
Right.
say, this is what you're planning to do.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mrs. Federico?
Can you just clarify for me how the policy applies to vending machines?
You cannot sell any food, you can't exempt food in the vending machines, you can't sell anything that's not on the healthy food certification list in a vending machine anywhere in the district.
So
Period.
all the vending machines have to have foods on the list?
Correct.
Okay.
Does that include this building?
No. It's
saying.
in the faculty
I'm just
room,
saying.
wouldn't include that, it's only for the students.
Other questions? Am I correct that this, if the 10 cents a meal goes away, the standards that we have to follow in terms of what we're providing the students do not change, correct? The standards are separate, they're
Right, well, the
federal?
standards are separate, and that's a very good question. One of the things that I think why this is slated to cut out of the governor's budget is because the national standards came into effect, so that nationwide, there are standards of what is sold in schools. However, Connecticut, being ahead of the curve and being healthier and has been for years, their standards are more strict than the federal guidelines. So I would hope that if they are not going to fund the healthier standards, that they would let us go by what the federal standards are, but that's probably their decision.
Okay.
Does that mean Twinkies on the menu?
No
Does that mean Twinkies on the menu?
Twinkies and Pop-Tarts.
Oh, no.
I'm just asking.
Just one example is that the.
We know what you guys are eating.
Hey, it's 20 to 10, use some sugar in the
Yeah, these standards wouldn't.
Peanut butter cups are good for you, covered with chocolate.
No whole milk, right?
How about whole milk? Is that on the national one or
In Connecticut, we only can sell milk, milk, water, soy milk, rice milk, and there is no there is no whole milk in our lunch program. I don't think it's on the whole milk is on the healthy standards for either one. So we only sell non-fat flavored milk and 1% or non-fat milk, right, plain milk.
I have the same standards, no whole milk and no 2%, 1% and skim only.
I can't even have a choice of
Where's my cream?
All right, Mrs. Federico?
I'm just curious about why we wouldn't still follow Connecticut standards if we didn't have to. Are there things on there that you would?
No, I mean, I
an
wouldn't
example.
want to roll back the standards to
Okay.
the federal. No, I wouldn't. But I would like to have some financial assistance that they've been providing. Like, for example, one of the things Connecticut is very pure in nutrition standards where nothing with artificial sweeteners is allowed.
Okay.
Where they are allowed in the national standards.
Okay.
So.
Other questions before we have our motions? Okay, so the motion has to be done in two parts. It's a lengthy motion, so bear with Mr. Sadie, please. First motion.
First motion is to make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approve the participation in healthy food certification and certify that all food items offered for sale to students in the schools under our jurisdiction and not exempted from the Connecticut nutrition standards published by the Connecticut State Department of Education will meet said standards during the period July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2016, period. Such certification shall include all food offered for sale to students separately from reimbursable meals at all times and from all sources, including but not limited to school stores, vending machines, school cafeterias, and any fundraising activities on school premises, whether or not school sponsored.
Is there a second? So the exemption is the separate motion.
Thank you.
Is there a second? Okay, Mr. DeRosa seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Mr. Sadie.
Make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approve the exclusion from certification food items that do not meet the Connecticut nutrition standards, provided that 1, such food is sold in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend, and 2, such sale is at the location of the event, and 3, such food is not sold from a vending machine or school store.
Is there a second? Mr. DeRosa seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you.
I just want to make a comment. Thank you very much. I notice year after year you show up, and for some reason the agenda puts you at about 10 o'clock at night every time. So thank you for coming to us at this late hour.
You're welcome, thank you.
All right. right.
I think you should bring snacks and maybe they'll move
Yes,
it up on
maybe.
you.
All right.
Good snacks.
Last item, Dr. Feaser.
Last item is the Human Resources Report, Mrs. Kapasna. Thank you.
Welcome to my world, Eileen.
Later and later. This month you have the job postings, personnel recommendations, as well as a couple of resignations, retirements. And for this month, we have attached the spring coaches at the high school level for both Foreign High School and Law High School.
Any questions for Mrs. Kapasna? None? Seeing none? Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so we move on to consent agenda items with item 3E removed to new business. So again, on the consent, just warning you that the item 2 is kind of lengthy, so Mr. Satty's going to read everything. So consent agenda items. Move to approve.
Make a motion, the Milford Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as follows. Number 1, the disbursement report. Number 2, consideration of minutes for the February 10th, 2015, February 11th, 2015, February 17th, 2015 meetings of the Board of Education. Additionally, I make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approve the educational specifications for the hazardous material abatement project at Joseph A. Foran High School and authorize the superintendent to apply for state reimbursement from the State Department of Education Office of School Facilities Unit, period. The last motion is a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves the plans, specifications, and estimates for the hazardous material abatement project at Joseph A. Foran High School, period.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, so we move to new business. The minutes from the February 23rd, 2015 Committee of the Whole meeting. Mr. Seti, do you have a motion to approve those, please?
So motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting of February 23rd, 2015. Committee of the Whole meeting, February 23rd, 2015.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? Yes, Mr. DeGrego.
Yeah, Madam Chair, on page 3, just before public comment, says following the discussion, Mr. DeGrego challenged Malone and McBroom to find a better option. I would like to add what else I said that night, if I may read it. I took notes when I was talking.
So, Mr. DeGrego, you want to add your verbatim statement that you made that evening?
Yes, ma'am.
So we've had discussion about verbatim statements during discussion. I think you and I discussed that. Do you want to go ahead and read what you said?
Okay.
So.
I was addressing Malone and McBroom at the time I made the statement. I said, we need to decide what the criterias were. I would just like to keep our thoughts focused on redistricting with the neighborhood, families, and natural boundaries in mind. Malone and McBroom, thank you for that information. I know Milford is aging and population is declining. However, North Milford is thriving. And I said, please refer to page 15. This area in the circle is vibrant. They, the 110 families, all moved there so these 110 families' children can go to Matheson. Now, as I was addressing them, Mrs. August said, then interjected, that these children were going to Orange Avenue was referred to in our previous pages. In other words, pages 14, 13, and 12. I reiterated in response to her, yes, but you did not explain that most of the children currently going to JFK are now switched to Matheson, causing this shift. I further stated, children on my own street, the same street Matheson is on, will be going to Orange Avenue. And finally I said, I have to watch out for my constituents, and I'm not voting for this change. And Madam Chair, that's what I would like added to that paragraph.
Okay, so as we discussed, the minutes do not reflect verbatim discussion from board members. Mrs. Griffin's role is to take the discussion and put the gist of the discussion in the minutes, but no board member has their verbatim discussion listed in the minutes. Minutes only have to reflect, the only verbatim items in the minutes are the motions that are stated. So if she didn't get the gist of what you were saying, if there was a different gist, but verbatim discussion doesn't get put in the minutes. Our minutes are not a transcription of what is said at the meeting.
But you see, Madam Chair, when I went to CABE last year, you know, Chairman Tracy urged me to go for orientation. Dr. Fiza advised us all to go. In the class of CABE, which stands for the Connecticut Association of Board of Education, they told us in all the seminars I went to, don't talk at a board meeting. Learn to listen first. Don't go there acting like you know, been there for 10 years. Learn to listen and then talk. So that, with that in mind, Madam Chair, that's what I was doing. I was learning to listen. So every time I ask you for permission to talk, I was under the impression that once I got your permission, because believe me, I respect everybody in here, and if you all know what an utterance is, I never do an utterance because that's disrespectful to everyone, like, oh, here we go again, or something. I always ask permission. So I was under the impression that when I talk, that what I was saying was for the record. You see what I'm saying, Madam Chair?
Well, just for board etiquette, everybody has to be recognized to speak. So that's a given, that everyone is recognized to speak. But the discussion is not verbatim, recorded verbatim in the minutes. So the discussion is amongst us. It contributes to whatever is on the agenda. But actually what everybody says, that would be a transcript of a meeting or like a court transcript where every single thing is verbatim recorded. That's not what minutes are for. Minutes are meant to be a recording of the business taken at a meeting. So the only thing that really has to be in minutes are the motions made verbatim, exactly how they're stated. When the meeting is started, when the meeting's called to order, you want to establish a quorum, who's there, the purpose of the meeting, the motions that are made verbatim, who made the motion, the second for the motion, what the vote of the motion is, when the meeting is adjourned. Those are the only requirements of the minutes. We don't have to have any discussion in the minutes. So the discussion that is in our minutes, it's Mrs. Griffin's job to kind of encapsulate what the gist of what is said. None of us have our verbatim statements in the minutes. The minutes would be 50 pages long if we recorded every single thing that is said at a meeting. So no board member has their verbatim statements in the minutes. The only exception I would say to that is that if a board member comes with a prepared statement that they want to read at board comment time, they can say at that time, I'm going to read a prepared statement and I would like this entered into the record, and they can then give it to Mrs. Griffin at that point to enter into the record. But that's really the only time that I would say the verbatim statement. The discussion that we have amongst ourselves is never, ever verbatim in the minutes.
Madam Chair, I want to thank you for letting me read my statement. And I also want everyone here to know I didn't have a written statement, that I was talking based on Mr. Zuber saying Milford's agent.
So it was part of the discussion.
I didn't have that, right.
It was part of the discussion.
Right. So, therefore, my statement that I'm not voting for this change won't get in the minutes either. Nothing will be.
Well,
here's what I want to say, Ms. Glenn. With all due respect to you, please don't misconstrue that I'm being disrespectful to you. You see, when I read it, it looks like I made a statement and I got slapped on the hand by Mrs. Auger and go back, get back in the corner. And you know, it made me stop and think like, no, that's not what happened. I didn't just hear her response and kowtow. I came back to her with a reiteration that wasn't in that quote, and I felt hurt that that's the way it reads.
Well, what I would say is that if you wanted to say tonight, I would like the record to show that I said that I will not support this option.
Right.
That would be, I think that would be a legitimate request, that I would like the record to show that I said at this meeting that I will not vote for this option.
Thank you, Ms. Glenn.
That would be.
I appreciate that so much.
So would you like to have that change made to the
Yes,
minutes?
I would.
Okay, do you have that, Mrs. Griffin? All right. Are there any other, Mr. Sadi?
Just so I understand where we are, and Madam Chair, through you to the board, I agree with the assessment. Minutes are not a verbatim account of what we've done because we don't transcribe it, nor do we have any way of audio recording it, although we know that some of our meetings are on MGAT. What I do suggest, though, is that the minutes of the meeting for February 23rd, 2015, you want changed, and yet not everybody can remember what was said. And I think you just indicate you changed, you said, came from a written report of what you started, and you went to something that came off of it. So I don't think we should change the minutes of February 23rd, 2015. The minutes tonight would recognize your comments, I would suggest, in a manner that might be more acceptable to the question.
Personally, I do remember Mr. DeGrego making that last statement that he would not support this option. I remember that, him saying that. I don't know if anybody else remembers him saying that, but I remember him saying that. So I'm not uncomfortable putting that change into the minutes, but I would be uncomfortable to start a precedence where we're taking verbatim, after the fact, verbatim statements from people and adding them in the minutes.
Okay. So point of order, I guess, then, is that being proposed, because I'm the one that has to sign off on it after the secretary, is that we were going to add that Mr. and Mrs. Griffin's going to be able to write down how it's going to be changed. Could we just get a point of order as to what is going to be the exact change, please?
All right. So
through the chair to the speaker or through the chair.
On page 3, it would be, following the discussion, Mr. DeGrego challenged my learning room to find a better option for the 110 Mathewson students who are slated to go to Orange F School. Ms. Auger reiterated that was explained in the presentation. Mr. DeGrego indicated he could not support that option. Is that?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is that?
I have no further discussion.
Yes, Mr. DeRosa.
I just have a question. Is this setting a different precedence to what we're currently doing now? And the reason why I ask that is I'd rather not do that. I'd rather add it to tonight's meeting from a perspective and under new comment or board comment.
Well, I had actually suggested to Mr. DeGrego that he might want to use board comment for the purpose of reiterating his statement, and it's his option what he wants to do. I mean, he can request that we don't have to vote to change them, to accept the minutes as amended, and the minutes would stay as they are in that instance. But typically, my experience has been that you correct minutes or amend minutes for something that has substantive value to the minutes. For instance, if somebody was not listed as being present, if they were omitted, and so, Madam Chair, I did attend this meeting and I'm listed as being absent. Or if somebody, in the course of discussion, because we do put some discussion in our minutes, we don't follow the letter of the law, so to speak, where we eliminate all discussion. So you have to find that balance. But if someone said, I don't support that, but Mrs. Griffin wrote that he said, or he or she said, I do support that, that's a substantive difference in the minutes. You could say that it's a gray area, I think. It's a gray area. I would not support if Mr. DeGrego pressed the issue of having his full statement added into the minutes, I would not support that. I am comfortable with adding that one line that he stated he could not support that option, personally. So, I can't tell him that he can't request to have the minutes changed, so it's his option to put that request out, and it's our choice to vote for it or not to vote for it, I guess is.
So we would vote on these minutes
well, we would vote we're going to vote on the minutes as amended. The minutes as corrected. The minutes as corrected. And if you don't feel we should make the correction, then you would vote no to that. Is that fair? Okay, further discussion?
Point of order, I guess.
Yes, Mr. Sadi.
Since it's the, who makes the motion now to have the amendment made? The board member who was asking for the amendment?
I would say the secretary, you would. If you're willing to. If you're not willing to, then I'll ask Mr. DeGrego to make the motion. He can make the motion himself.
I'm just thinking, if I'm not talking about me personally, but thinking about precedent, I think they go back to Mr. DeRosa's comment. If there was a motion to amend, as I say, not a subdivision, the person was not present, I best, the claim now is that the full impact of the statement of the board member was not put into the minutes, as opposed to they were here, not there, they made a specific vote. It would seem to me that that amendment would go back to the board member that wanted to have that amendment made.
Okay, so Mr. DeGrego, would you make a motion to approve corrected minutes, please?
Is that all I say?
Make a motion to approve the corrected minutes of the February 23rd Committee of the Whole meeting.
I make a motion that we accept the amended minutes to the February 23rd, 2015 Committee of the Whole.
Is there a second? All right, so seeing no second, the motion fails, and we'll go back to the original motion, which is to approve the minutes of the February 23rd Committee of the Whole meeting as presented.
You believe I
And there was a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, motion carries. Roll call. Roll call.
Yep. Claire Casey?
I'm sorry, what?
So the motion is to approve the minutes as
Okay,
presented.
yes, I'm sorry.
Michael DeGrego?
No.
John DeRosa?
Yes.
Suzanne DeBias?
Yes.
Jennifer Federica?
Yes.
Heidi Gold-Dorkin?
Yes.
Anthony Pacelli?
Yes.
Robert Sadi?
Yes.
Earl Wisterman?
Yes.
Susan Glennon?
Yes.
9-1.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries 9-1. All right, we move on to board comment. Mr. DeGrego.
I make a
Yes.
comment that I disagree with what Malone McBroom suggested with the plans for A, B, and C, D. And I just want to make a comment that I'm not voting for the redistricting. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. DeGrego. Mr. Sadi.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to report back to the board that I had a visit to Metasite, and I forgot to open up my phone and tell you the date, but it was before today's meeting. And what they tasked me to do, which goes back to your February 10th of 2015 minutes, there were special awards given to two students that could not attend, and I actually, as a representative of the board, they didn't tell me until after I got there, but as a representative of the board, I was the one that passed out the two little things that Dr. Fieser normally does, and I took all the shaking of the hands, so I'm not going to go around and shake all of your hands. But I want to thank you for the task, and I think I performed it admirably.
That
was for the
Firefighter Safety Award, yes.
Any other board comment? Okay, seeing none, a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn the meeting of tonight.
Mr. DeRosa has seconded with haste. Any opposed? Any opposed? Opposed haste.
Right?
Yes.